Hello and welcome to another Writer's Showcase. We haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm glad that we can get back on it. Anyway, we're going to be starting a somewhat new format. It's basically going to be a uniform writing group, so that way we can be able to all be on the same page with our writing. A lot of these have probably been written for ways. But let's get started with the first guest. Please welcome Carl.
Hello, hello. Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's been a minute. And let's next bring on Count Valerian.
I curse you. I mean,
Reveal your true identity at last.
well, yeah, or one of them.
He is a man of many faces.
Yeah.
A god of many faces, you might say.
A being of many faces.
Indeed. Indeed. Alrighty, and we have one final guest. Please welcome Cairo.
Yeah, that is how I typically roll. I swing a heavy weapon against what looked like a orc. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. How about you guys? How are you?
Afternoon.
Doing good.
Not dead yet.
Here.
Oh,
Not-
that's good to hear.
Yep, not dead yet. We will eventually all die, but what can you do? All right, so I know Valerian is eating, so I think that what we could do is go Krim, then Valerian, and then Carl. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Any chance I could go second?
Okay, we could do Carl Sailor, and then Krim, and then Valerian. That's fine.
Okay.
All
All right.
Okay, so I guess that's me up first.
1 second. Let's bring in Aspiring.
我が力我が刃我が狂気我が狂気をもて見解せよエクスはあうがけエクスプロージョン
Wait.
Glad you could make it.
Afternoon. I thought that was Tarek's intro, though.
He
Aspiring?
upgraded, so I'm just having Aspiring inherited because it fits him.
Fair enough.
Why do I need to inherit one when I have several of my own that I've given you?
Yeah, I didn't know we were doing hand-me-down intros. I wonder who got my old Jack Sparrow introduction.
I've kind of just used that periodically. I haven't used that very often, actually.
Well,
All right. So we'll just do Carl, Krim, Aspiring, and then Valerian, and then me. I think that
Did you not check Bliss?
I did check. I did message Wes. I haven't heard back from him.
Strange.
Yeah.
alas. Well,
Yeah.
shall I start things then?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So this picks up in the middle of my of this chapter. If you remember from last time, I had to break off in the middle of a chapter because I accidentally got struck with some inspiration, and I had to urgently rewrite a whole section of my book in order to shuffle some things around. And we are going to see the results of that labor today. So, when we left Shenna last, she was touring a factory which was making cloth and is calling up some very uncomfortable reminiscences of the early Industrial Revolution. And in particular, there is a lady in the back of the room, working one of the looms, who has a scar across her nose, who seems strangely familiar. But we will see more of that when we continue with Chapter 32, House of the Weavers. The second and third floors were work halls, organized along the same pattern as the first floor, and so Master Jaren led Shenna up to the fourth floor instead, without looking in. There was less dust up here, and more light due to the presence of broad windows along the back wall. Large wooden cranes jutted out into the open air beyond the floor, and several teams of strong young men were hard at work hoisting tremendous bales of wool into the hall and stacking them along the opposite wall. The rest of the floor was given over to spinning wheels, though of a type Shenna had never seen before, far larger, and with dozens of spools of thread to each machine. "It's those marvelous new spinning engines that make the entire operation possible," Master Jaren said. "One girl at a machine can do the work of 20 old-style spinners, and in a fraction of the time, too. These spinning engines supply all 3 weaving floors with thread." "It must be difficult balancing the output to individual different floors," Shenna said. "Whatever do you mean?" Master Jaren asked. "Well, I mean, if the spinners produce too much thread, or too little," Shenna said, "or if the weavers down below can't manage it all, was it a complicated process to figure out the balance? Or is there a standing protocol to handle overflows?" Master Jaren shrugged. "Just work the other teams harder, I suppose." "I see," Shenna said. Beside them, one of the spinner girls noticeably quickened her pace. The topmost floor was given over entirely to administration. Shenna followed Master Jaren down a long hallway, past rooms of accountants and archivists, workshops where carpenters went about repairing broken looms and spinning engines, and a small kitchen where lunch was being brewed in the form of a coarse porridge thick enough to be eaten by hand. "The better to get the girls back to work as soon as possible," Master Jaren said. Finally, they reached the manager's office at the far end of the building, though the doorway had clearly not been constructed with a mind to someone of Master Jaren's breadth. "Now then," Master Jaren said, setting himself down into a desk that was likely twice again as expensive as the rest of the equipment in the building. "I was told you've a proposal for a new industrial process." By now, Shenna's explanation about the nature and applications of undead constructs was as smooth as it had ever been. Master Jaren listened intently and offered many enthusiastic comments. The actual design principles were quite beyond his grasp, as he freely admitted, but the projected results were very tempting, for they would eliminate the need for his largest and current operating expense: wages. "I thought you said workers were cheap," Shenna remarked. "Oh, individually, to be sure," Master Jaren said. "But their wages have a nasty tendency to pile up when taken in large numbers. I've around 600 girls working the looms on the working floors, and 50 or more on the spinning floor. About that, I'm burning through 35 shem every day between the lot of them, and that's just the working girls, not counting the foremen, the carpenters, the haulers, bookkeepers, and the rest. The total jumps up to nearly a full lath a day when considering the whole process." "And how much do they produce every day in terms of marginal profit?" Shenna asked. "Well, a team of 5 will typically produce about 4 finished bolts in a day," Master Jaren said. "Or at least that's the level of productivity we've come to expect from our girls. Total daily output is usually 480 bolts. As to the monetary value, it of course fluctuates with market rates, but 4 lath is a common daily figure in gross." 4 lath in gross a day, and this man was bellyaching about a piffling 35 shem, and 35 shem between 650 girls. At a rough glance, that worked out to less than 4 chak a day to each one. Hardly enough for a comfortable life in Accra. I can loan you one of our annual fiscal diaries if you would like some more detailed information on our operations. Master Jaren nodded his head towards a cheap-looking bookshelf sagging under the weight of parchment volumes piled on it. It seemed oddly out of place next to the magnificence of the desk. But I suppose costs had to be cut somewhere. That would be appreciated, Shenna said. But at the moment, what I need most is an active demonstration of the working process so that I can take down the details of production. I can arrange that, Master Jaren said, hoisting himself back out of his seat and onto his feet. Shenna followed him out of the administration office to fetch a scrap of parchment and a pen, and then to one of the workshops where a freshly repaired loom stood at the ready. Master Jaren went down to the working floor to fetch a team of weavers while Shenna jotted down some preliminary notes. A few minutes later, Master Jaren returned with 5 women from the work floors. One of them was the strange woman with the scarred nose. And once again, Shenna felt that itch of recognition spring up in her brain, that maddening spark of familiarity that refused to go away, no matter how many times Shenna reminded herself that she had never met a woman with such a scar like that before. This is a representative from the Angara Consortium, Master Jaren announced to the working girls. You are to demonstrate the process at the looms for her, obey her commands, and answer whatever questions are asked of you. It'll be double daily wages for the lot of you if she is satisfied. And with that curt instruction, he waddled out of the workshop to perform some duty that he probably had to do. The girls quickly took up their positions, and 2 of them began threading the loom. Shenna moved close to watch their process, though every now and again her eyes flickered back to the scarred woman, who seemed now to be making a conscious effort to avoid Shenna's gaze as much as possible. In the end, the loom was all threaded up before Shenna could take down any notes on the subject. Small matter, though, Shenna supposed. That part of the process was probably too complicated and too rarefied for construct labor to be cost-effective, at least at first. Shenna stepped back from the loom to allow the team to begin their work. She scrutinized each position in turn, observing the motions involved and jotting them down in a little script she had devised during her work with Magistress Karna. Every now and again, Shenna would ask a question of one of the girls about her part in the process, or tell the group to slow down a little so that she could see everything in its proper details. Mercifully, the scarred woman had the simplest job, and Shenna had no need to ask for her clarifications. Who could she possibly be? The bolt of cloth was barely begun by the time Shenna had collected all the notes she needed. She quickly decided that it wasn't necessary to wait however long it took for the full bolt before moving on to the finishing. As with loading the loom before, this part only required 2 pairs of hands, and so Shenna dispatched one of the girls to find Master Jaren and tell him that she was satisfied. So what you been scribbling down there, lady? Shenna looked up from reviewing her notes. One of the working girls was standing beside her, a scrawny little waif with a short mop of ragged brown hair and a small scar across one of her eyebrows. A boxing scar, perhaps? That was usually where such blemishes came from. But Shenna had never seen one on a girl. Or at least, not yet. Would you like to see? Shenna tipped her parchment for the girl to peek. I've been recording the precise motions on the part of each of the girls in the working process. Uh-huh. And what's this for? The girl asked. Is this some kind of archive business, like what the Maggies sometimes get up to? Oh, this has nothing to do with the magisterium, Shenna laughed. It's far more practical than anything those tired old academics could dream up. This is a scheme to increase productivity by employing... Shen hesitated for a moment before settling upon the euphemism. Employing construct labor. Don't know what that is, the girl shrugged. Don't really matter, so long as we're still the ones working the looms. Yes, Shanna nodded, scratching nervously behind an ear. Of course. The girl's scarred eyebrow pitched up suspiciously. We are still gonna be working the looms, right? Shanna's face flushed. I mean, from what I saw of the floors down below, this seems like a rather miserable place to work. I don't care, I still need the money, the girl said, raising her voice sharply. But they're only paying 3 chalk a day, Shanna protested. And even then, Master Jaren could easily... That 3 chalk is the only thing keeping my parents and my 2 little brothers fed. Shanna flinched as a sudden slap burst across her cheek. You want we should all starve, huh? The girl snarled, pressing her attack as Shanna frantically raised an arm as a flurry of blows whirled forth. You want us kicked out of the apartment? Thrown into the waters like garbage? That what you want to see happen to me and mine, you little... That's enough! Shanna peeked timidly through her raised arms. The woman with the scarred nose was suddenly standing beside the girl. She had caught her by the wrist, intercepting her next blow in midair, and was glaring down at the smaller girl. Shanna recognized the woman now, her strong, proud voice having yielded the final clue. It was Iseldra. The scar across her nose made sense now. An unwelcome reminder of that night in the Redstone gaming den when a stray blow from an angry drunk had sent her face first into a gaming table. A blemish that had likely cost her the job, if she hadn't already been dismissed due to the disturbance. And yet, despite the scar, or perhaps because of it, she seemed more dignified than she had ever appeared before. Yeah, what this skirk's on about, the smaller girl said. She gonna get us all thrown out of... You've made your case, Iseldra said, pulling the girl away from Shanna and interposing herself between the two of them. Best not to belabor the point now. You'll only hurt your rhetorical skill. What's the meaning of all this shouting? Master Jaren bellowed as he squeezed himself through the doorway. Keep quiet, Iseldra hissed through the side of her mouth at the girl beside her, and stepped forward and bowed deeply. It was my fault, Master Jaren, she said, her voice as even and calm as though she were merely relaying some unremarkable production figures. There was a dispute about working priorities, and I allowed the matter to escalate out of control. I apologize for the disturbance, and I accept full responsibility. I've tolerated more than enough disturbances from you, Master Jaren wheezed. This is the last straw now. Collect your bits and pieces and be off with you, girl. Iseldra made no protest. She merely bowed once again, and then setting her shoulders back, held her head high, and marched through the doorway and out into the corridor beyond with all the dignity of a queen. And we pick up again with chapter 33, Iseldra's Tale. I'm sorry you had to witness that unpleasantness, Master Jaren said as the rest of the working girls filed out of the workshop to resume their shift on the floor. Anyway, here's your annual financial diary I promised you. It's a copy, don't fret about returning it. Thank you, Master Jaren, Shanna said, taking the ledger and tucking it under her arm with the notes. Some days I get the feeling that these girls simply don't appreciate the opportunities we provide for them here, Master Jaren grumbled. They're always bickering and shirking whenever my back is turned, and even when they keep to a proper pace, they still complain and moan, such that my poor foreman can barely keep them on task. It would do them good to be a little more grateful. Well, I shouldn't keep you much longer. Shall I show you to the exit? I can find my own way out, thank you, Shanna said. She made a conscious effort not to peer through the doorways onto the work floors as she passed down the stairs. She had no desire to see again the horrid working conditions to which those poor girls were subjected. Conditions for which, according to Master Jaren at least, they ought to be grateful. As soon as Shanna stepped out through the main doors, she drew in a deep breath, luxuriating in the clear air in her lungs and the natural sunlight on her face. She didn't know how much longer it would be before Sebastian and Hendrika returned to collect her, but at least she could enjoy the wait out here. I suspected that was you out there. Shenna's eyes followed the voice and came to rest upon a woman sitting alone on the edge of the walkway beside the central canal. What is this now, the second time I've lost a job because of you? Iselda said. Or maybe the third time. I'm honestly starting to lose count at this point. And would you believe I still don't even know your name? I'm sorry, Shenna said, slowly making her way towards Iselda at the water's edge. I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I really should have been more. Oh, don't waste your sympathy on this wretched little place, darling, Iselda said, as Shenna took a seat beside her. It's the money I'll miss, not the labor. Besides, I can't possibly stay angry at a fellow Red River girl. Shenna blinked. A Red River girl? That's where you're from, isn't it? Iselda said. Oh, I'll grant your accent has faded quite a bit since I first heard it, but there's still a smattering of the Red River on your tongue. You don't sound like a Red River girl, Shenna remarked. I suppose not, Iselda shrugged. But I can assure you that I most certainly did 14 years ago when I first washed up here. You didn't by any chance come from a town called Riverwatch, did you? Shenna asked, while mentally sifting through the ashes of decades-old gossip to think of a girl who might have vanished from town abruptly one night. It was a long shot, but still possible. Blackbriar, actually, Iselda said. I'm afraid I've not heard of any place called Riverwatch. I've never heard of a town called Blackbriar either, Shenna said. Oh, there's not much there that's worth hearing about, Iselda said. A squalid little hamlet of less than 24 households with a few patches of ragged farmland all about, and plopped down alongside a stream beside a stream beside a stream beside a stream of the Red River. I doubt I could point it out on a map even if I cared to find it again. And why did you leave? Shenna asked, and quickly added, if you don't mind me asking, of course. Iselda's eyes flickered from one side to the next. I didn't have a choice. It was either get out or... One of her hands wandered absently up to caress her throat. Well, let us say that I shan't be visiting home any time soon and leave the matter where it lies. Shenna nodded. I'm very sorry to hear that. Oh, it was no great tragedy in the end, Iselda said in a voice that was suspiciously devoid of emotion. I had been making secret plans to depart for Acre for some time already. It was just a matter of jumping up my timetable. Urgently. I can't return home either, Shenna said. She was coming to suspect that there was a significant overlap between their stories. Well, it's not an easy life here in Acre, Iselda said. But even if my plans didn't quite go as intended, it's still better than a life I would have been left to had I remained in Blackbriar. What were your plans? Shenna asked. Did you also come to join the Magisterium? Oh, nothing so ambitious, darling, Iselda laughed. I was going to be an actress. That was my plan. To spend my life putting on glamorous costumes and pretending to be someone else. A delicate maiden remaining ever faithful to her truly beloved, or an iron-willed matriarch standing firm against the cruel indifference of the world, or a vile villainess plotting and scheming all manner of wickedness. Those are the best roles, you know. She leaned back and let out a romantic sigh. But of course, breaking out of a village and breaking into the theatre are quite different things indeed. They didn't let you in the door, did they? Shenna surmised. And honestly, I can't fault them for it, Iselda said. A little knock on the backstage door, and there stands a girl of 16 summers in country rags and wooden shoes who says, Hello, I'm a recently arrived country bumpkin who can't read, can barely hold a tune, and hasn't yet gotten rid of her accent. Have you any leading roles lying about by chance? I probably would have shut the door in my face had the place has been reversed. You can't read? Shenna asked. It seemed so sad. It hadn't yet been a year since she had learned, but the skill had transformed her life in so many ways that she could never have imagined. Well, Blackbriar is not exactly renowned for its great universities and houses of learning, Iselda grumbled. I've picked up a smattering of readings since coming to Acre. enough to manage a clothier's shop or a gaming table at least. But I doubt I'll be penning any great plays or operas in the near future. She sighed. A shame, really. I'd like to have a story or two set down in writing someday. There was this one tale that I was quite fond of growing up, but forgive me for rambling. I'm sure you have better things to do than sit here listening to me going on. I don't mind, Shinna said. I'm waiting on a pickup at the moment. You may as well tell your story. All right, then, Isolde smiled. The tale begins, as these tales so often do, long years ago in a land far away, where a beautiful maiden was being held captive. She was going to be offered up as a sacrifice, possibly to slake the bloodthirst of a tyrannical demon, or to appease the wrath of a vengeful god, or... You don't know? Shinna balked. I thought this was your story. Oh, darling, fiddling with the details as you go along is half the fun, Isolde laughed. Especially the scary ones. The manner of the sacrifice, for example. Perhaps she is to be burnt alive, or drowned in a sacred river, or sealed into a holy grotto to be devoured by a monstrous creature, or her throat cut and the blood gathered into a holy chalice, or something else suitably fiendish and cruel. It puts one's own unique stamp upon the tale. Anyways, news of the sacrifice spreads to all corners of the land and comes in time to a stalwart young peasant lad far away in the countryside. And when this handsome young man learns of... Is he always handsome? Shinna said, rolling her eyes. I bet that's one detail that never changes. Oh, well, if we're going to be picturing these characters in our heads, they may as well be pleasant to look at, Isolde shrugged. Anyhow, he learns of this poor maiden's unhappy fate, and he takes it upon himself to deliver her from distress. And so he embarks upon an adventure, braving many perils and threats, and along the way, and in time comes to the tower, or enchanted grove, or wherever the princess is being held. Wait, she's a princess now? Oh, why not? I can have a princess in my tale if I wish. Anyhow, our young hero charges boldly in, confounding the guards with ease, and sweeping the princess up in his arms and taking her away to a place of safety. And then, delivered at last from mortal peril, the princess stands before her rescuer and she declares her unending gratitude and marries him on the spot, Shinna groaned. Aha, but that's the best part, Isolde said, with a twinkle growing in her eye. Our bold young hero is certainly anticipating such a reward, to be sure, but instead the princess strikes him across the cheek and demands to be returned at once. Shinna blinked. So that she can be sacrificed. Clever, isn't it? Isolde grinned. It takes the usual expectation and stands them upon their heads, you see? But that's even worse, Shinna protested. It was bad enough when she was just a prize to be won in someone else's story, but at least she got rescued. And now she's rejecting him out of hand? Because of what? Because of pride that's just so stupid. That's the thing, though, Isolde said, with a twinkle still glittering in her eye. She isn't wrong. Shinna blinked again. Isn't she? Well, just think about it from her perspective, Isolde said. Our poor beleaguered princess has no idea what's happening. How was she to know that this strange young fellow was coming to her rescue? For all she knew, he might have been simply a kidnapper coming to extort an easy ransom, to say nothing of other indignities that young women are known to suffer at the hands of young men. And what's more, our young hero hasn't even bothered to learn the context behind her predicament. Perhaps there was blackmail involved, and now her loved ones are to suffer as a result. Perhaps she has already arranged a rescue plan, and he's just buggered it all up. Or perhaps she agreed to the sacrifice as an escape from a worse fate. There's so many different possibilities, each with their own nuances and subtleties. And yet this bloody do-gooder decides, apropos of nothing, to barge in and upend her entire world on his terms, and all without so much as a mistress by your leave from him. Well, what should he have done? Shinna asked. Talk to her, Isolde said. Learn about her troubles in her own words, and then decide how to assist her. If you're going to rescue someone, you ought to at least get their opinion first. I see, Shinna said. Of course the answer was simple in the end. It was always something simple. But then she was beginning to learn that so much of the troubles of the world sprang from simple things, so simple that they were overlooked. So, what happens next in your tale? Oh, I haven't gotten around to figuring out that bit, Isildur said. Oh, I'll probably have them wander about the land for a while, get into more adventures. They'll possibly see the error of their ways at some point and come to a mutual understanding. Ooh, I could have the young hero be a woman as well. That might make the story interesting. And have her rescue a prince instead, Shenna suggested. Oh, nobody will believe that, Isildur scoffed. Besides, who says a woman can't rescue another woman? You girls have to stick together, you know. Very true, Shenna nodded. Anyhow, that's my tale, Isildur said. It'll probably never actually get the time to make anything productive out of it, but it's a pleasant way to pass the tedious hours on those difficult days. You know, I could probably teach you how to write, Shenna offered. At least I could help you fill in the gaps in your knowledge. That's kind of you to offer, Isildur sighed. And I really do wish I could accept. But I'm sure I'll have more pressing needs soon enough. Sometime later, perhaps, if I can manage to scrape together a little stability in my life. A little stability in her life. Perhaps that was all anybody ever really needed. That was all Yannick had needed to turn his life around. Of course, now he was safely out of Acre. And maybe Shenna could help Iseldra find some stability, if nothing else, to make up for the times she'd gotten her fired. But how to do it? Do you know anything about gardening? Shenna asked. Gardening? Iseldra said, no doubt perplexed by the non sequitur. Yes, I've recently come into a new apartment, you see, Shenna explained, and we are in desperate need of a gardener to service the estate. Have you any learning on the subject? Isildur shrugged. I know which direction the plants are generally supposed to grow, but beyond that... Oh, don't worry about all that, Shenna said. I can teach you whatever you need to know. It's easier than it looks. All right, then. How much does it pay? How much do you need? Let's see, Isildur muttered. The rent for my apartment is a shem every month, and my share comes to... I'll pay you a shem a week, Shenna said. Oh, darling, you needn't, Isildur said. How much could a gardener possibly be worth? I won't hear any protest, Shenna said firmly. I've more money than I know what to do with, and hardly anything worthwhile to spend it on. It'll do you more good than it shall for me. Isildur laughed. Very well, then. I suppose I shall consent to be rescued just this once. Where is this new apartment of yours? Clearwater. Clearwater? Isildur gaped. My word, but you really are moving up in the world. And that's that.
Good work.
It was quite a captivating story to listen to.
Thank you. Very much.
Well, it was definitely something interesting to listen to.
I find that giving money to poor people is kind of a waste. They won't really be grateful anyway, and they'll probably just stab you in the back with it afterwards. What she ought to have done is kill Isildur and then employ her as a construct, and not hear anything.
One of the things I really missed about
I think I see where Carl got his inspiration.
I've really, really missed that fanfiction, just reading the little stuff that you came up with in the old server.
Well, oh yeah, that's in the old. Oh yeah, it is in the old server, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
I still have the document with
You
it.
can still get it. The old server is still available for anything you want to look for.
Yeah, well,
And I have a document of it too somewhere.
The old server still exists, people. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
still a member of it. It's still
it's just
there.
the one with the purple ass.
Yeah, it's the purple.
Thank
oh,
you,
is that what that thing
Aspiring.
is? Is that what that thing is? Oh my god.
Yes, it's a purple glittery butt. What did you think it was, Valeria?
I don't know. It
Okay.
didn't look like anything in particular to me.
Mounds of sand. I don't know.
I wasn't thinking about what it was. It was a weird purple thing. It's even weirder purple thing than I thought it was, apparently.
Yeah, it's a shame you can't see it being slapped anymore.
But
Well.
why?
Life is full of tragedies.
Yep. Very tragic experiences.
Yeah, we're not gonna miss that.
You're not gonna miss the purple ass.
Getting spanked. Yes, I will not miss it.
Trips non-support Scaly.
I
Is that
call bullshit
me?
on you.
Let's see. Is that me? Did I get my name changed on here? Okay, fair enough. I was a little uncertain for a moment who that was. Okay, but it must be me. It's got the text here. By the way, Athanasius got away from Shenna before she could kill him. But why am I spelling him with a Z?
Oh, Athanasius?
Maybe that was why.
That was probably before he became a communist.
Yeah. He's got a wonderful job of wiping out the population of Riverwatch so that I can turn them all into constructs. Unit Gareth, purred Shenna. Generalissima's pleasure is my light. Shenna smiled. Now, if you wouldn't mind, kill yourself so I make you a construct and you can do your work more effectively. Connor has developed a new model and we've selected you to try it on. Gareth started. He knew and approved of the plan to turn most of the population to zombie slaves, but surely that didn't apply to him. He thought quickly. But then how will I pleasure Generalissima, he asked. In case you're concerned, they were both well over 21 by this time. Shenna laughed a laugh as charming as a COVID virus's molecular structure. Easily. Our latest update is fully equipped. No comment. Jareth died. That no comment is the narrator, not Jareth, not Gareth or Shenna.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Now we know how
yeah.
Valerian's mind works.
Very enlightening.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, I have some thoughts on what you presented today, Carl.
The actual presentation, not the parody one.
What do you think?
Yep. I definitely like that we're starting to see the conflict that's going to arise from the mere existence of the constructs and how this is going to start shaping and changing society. Obviously, you've already spilled that out to us a long while ago, but it's nice seeing it actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I found the bit with the playwright with the writer pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's like, but do you see? I'm going to take his subversions and put it on. I'm going to take the expectation and flip it on its head. It's like, but why?
Because that's art.
And unlike so many other people, she actually manages to give a compelling reason why this subversion would happen. Which, thank you for putting that in there, because I want to keep reminding people, the point of subverting an expectation isn't to replace it with nothing; it's to replace it with something that you haven't considered before.
I'm also kind of pleased with the Life of Brian reference in there.
I didn't notice that. What was the reference? I've only seen in it once, but
I have never seen Life of
It's
Brian.
the ex-leper. The ex-leper. Arms for an ex-leper? Wait, an ex-leper? How'd you get healed? Jesus did, sir. I was hopping along. doing me business, and up he comes, cures me. One moment I'm a leper with the trade, next minute my livelihood's gone. Not so much as a by your leave. You're cured, mate. Bloody do-gooder. I was particularly happy about that bit because that was one of the pieces in Life of Brian that actually got challenged in court because it was supposedly blasphemous.
Nice.
Do-gooder.
Well, I mean, I guess it is, but does that make it illegal?
It was potentially illegal in Britain at the time because they still had blasphemy laws on the books.
Oh yeah, the blasphemy
Man,
laws. Oh, yeah.
I just love that there's just those laws on the books that nobody ever actually puts into practice. But then
Yeah,
some asshole
apparently.
somewhere, just like he gets his undies in a twist and he gets really pissed off and he pulls up, finds this really obscure law that nobody remembered to remove. Like it was just slated to be stricken out of the records, but nobody's got around to it, so he could still use it.
Yeah, apparently it is illegal to hang your feet out of the windows in Massachusetts. And I have no idea why that is on the books, but I mean, my window's right there, and I mean, fuck the police. So
There used to be a random. Yeah, there used to be a list of the. Remember this? Was it a newspaper or something? There used to be a list of these random laws that various states had. Like you can't play. There's some states where you can't play cards barefoot or something. Or
But
is it-
almost all of them are probably related to some sort of gang activity that the police or local government want to stamp out. Like, for example, the whole short-barreled shotgun thing. That driver there is like that whole
they could be
thing.
concealed in a trench coat, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
that whole shebang over there with all these obscure, weird, and nonsensical gun regulations that exist. A lot of them are over there because the government wanted to stamp out gang violence and activities by making it harder to conceal weapons.
Also to disarm the Black Panthers.
But
Well,
what
that's
country?
just California.
I mean, that's the reason we got the first assault ban, because
what-
Reagan wanted to get those, troublesome,
Sounds about right.
communists to, stop carrying guns.
Yeah, I mean, a racial
Mostly so
supremacist
the
group
FBI
going-
could bomb them with the move bombings in 1985 without any opposition. But that's inconvenient. So let's not talk about that.
But
I mean,
what
a
can-
group of
what-
racial supremacists going into the freaking Capitol building of an entire goddamn state, fully armed to the teeth, and basically imposing, intimidating lawmakers. That's we're just going to go and glance over that as well.
Well, yeah,
But what?
I'm just going to put it like this: the government exists to protect us from people like the Black Panthers. But when they start acting worse than the Black Panthers, that's when we start having problems. And unfortunately, our government has a long track record of acting even worse than the most vile humans that it's supposed to protect us from, which really makes us wonder what the point of this thing even is anymore.
But what confuses me most is the law about not playing cards barefooted. What did they expect? Not
I don't
not
understand.
refreshing their feet into
Maybe
the warm.
it's gross.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's just
gross, but
unsanitary,
getting
so
fined
weird.
or being put into jail for it, that's
Random.
stupid.
Maybe they just find them. Maybe they just find them $100,000 or something.
But what if they are in the park and there's nice grass to be placing your
Well,
feet on?
What, doing it in public? That's even worse.
Well, it's
Maybe it was
specifically.
just to target poor people from gambling.
Well, it's I think it's a specific. Well, wasn't it just you can't have your have it outside of the window or something, or hanging out of a
Well,
window?
it's a different law.
Oh, okay. Man, that's freaking weird.
I could see it just being made to target a certain part of the population just for whatever reason.
It was
I
made.
mean, there was a law in one of the southern states that specifically makes selling watermelon after dark illegal, and that was pretty clearly made to lock up freed black men after the slavery. So I mean, some of these are pretty transparent.
Yeah. When the
Makes
laws look
sense.
really weird, sometimes there's just a very particular reason.
Oh,
That has
actually,
nothing-
Balerion, you had a comment about one of your comments about Iseldra as was a criminal. One of the, I think, one of the things I tried to sort of make subtly imply about her past is that she's bisexual and was caught in flagrante delicto and had to leave town very quickly.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure if I was being too subtle about it or if it's, something that I should just leave on the cutting room floor or if I should be more specific. See, the thing is, Iseldra is a character who I really just introduced in Chapter 3 just to do the pretty woman gag, and that was basically it. And then I started having more ideas about what I could actually do with her, and now she's actually going to be a pretty significant character, and I kind of wanted to flesh her identity out a little bit.
I guess characters will do that.
Yeah, it happens.
It happened to Aragorn.
Yeah, he was originally the really stupid idea.
He was
He
a
really-
hobbit who wore shoes. His name was Shrotter, and he wore shoes because he was tortured, I think.
Yeah, it's like that tonally is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The only thing that's kind of dumber is the Bourbon script.
The woman's
yes.
brilliant.
It's a brilliant piece of comedy, and I would love to watch the movie made out of it because it would be hilarious.
Well, that counts.
Well, here's the thing:
And
John Borman is a
course you have
humorless
no-
sack of crap in a lot of ways.
And as you often love to say, you have no interest in bad movies. You only wish for more of them to be created so you can watch it.
Exactly.
You're just
I like
jealous.
yeah, I like interesting bad movies.
You're just
Balerion,
jealous of his greatness.
then you're the person who's most likely to know. Is there anywhere where hypocrisy is a sin in any religion?
Yes.
No,
Multiple ones.
nah, not really.
Islam literally in the Quran there is literally an excerpt that I remember reading as when I was way younger in the second chapter of the thing where God describes the punishment of the hypocrites in the afterlife. He says that theirs is like traveling around blind and deaf only for a flash of lightning to overwhelm their senses, leaving them blind and deaf once again, so that way they may continue going through the darkness. Something like that.
Now that I mention it,
I
Jesus
explicitly
did-
reference it in my own in book 2.
And I guess Jesus called
One of
them
Jesus'
hypocrites now and
favorite
then.
insults is just a simple "you hypocrite."
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
I'm consistent. I don't like boring bad movies. I like interesting bad movies.
Well, Borman's interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. In no other movie will you ever see Sauron portrayed as Punch and Mick Jagger combo,
Galadriel, said Mary.
or Lembas Bread becoming Galadriel's.
No comment. It just says Galadriel. It doesn't say what.
Should we perhaps move on?
Preferably,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, who wants up next? Should we do Balerion and then Karim, or what do you want to do?
Sorry?
Cool.
So what do you want? I'm just asking what you guys want to do.
I was hoping I could go next.
Okay, you can go next, and then Balerion, and then we'll go Aspiring Messiah, unless you guys have a time constraint that I'm not aware of.
Well, there isn't
Well,
any time
it's-
constraints I'm aware of.
It's
I'm clear.
currently 11 p.m. for me, so I would like
Okay.
to get things wrapped up, if I
Yeah,
may.
probably a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
Okay.
Gay vampire can't stay up late.
Come on now. Anyway, the story that I have for you today is one that I have written in a span of 6 hours. It is involving one of the main characters of my fantasy novel that I've gotten myself back into working on, and it's a more I would probably describe it as more action-packed compared to the other protagonists. So I hope you all enjoy what I have to read today. Dawn shone over the small hamlet known as Lorindor, a small community that consisted of millers and farmers that served as a stopping point for merchants, travelers, and mercenaries, all alike on their journey across the western Kakaran forests. Due to the village's location just within the fringes of any city baronies, the township found itself to be isolated and unguarded, causing them to form a militia consisting of the townsfolk and any sellswords that volunteer to serve as a guard and keep the peace and protect from marauders and banditry that may find themselves within Lorindor's borders. The occupation itself was generously compensated, as the pay was good, and the head of the militia offered housing to those who would come and serve as the protectors of this small hamlet. One such protector was a man named Merrick, a tall man that stood 2 meters tall. He found himself wandering past Lorindor and decided to stay and serve as a part of the militia, as he was strapped for a coin and wished to recover some of his travel funds before he made his way to larger cities for better prospects. It was this morning that he awakened in the house belonging to Lorik, the tavern keep that also served as the mayor of Lorindor. He stood by the window, gazing at the sunrise over the fields, shirtless, with his hand shading his eyes from the glaring sun. He turned around to look at the bed, where he spent the evening with the tavern keeper's daughter. He couldn't quite remember what her name was. Sasa, Mary, he thought to himself, trying to remember her name. All he knew is that he spent the evening at the tavern, and she caught his eye. The two spoke and got on. Then she invited him to spend the night over, and one thing led to another. He shrugged his shoulders and went to dress himself. Just as he had finished putting on his armor and clothing, consisting of wearing a brown tunic with chainmail underneath, a pair of trousers that were of olive green and leather boots, with a tabard tied round his waist. The young woman awakened, a smile on her face, as the first thing she saw was Merrick, fully dressed and about ready to leave. "Good morning, handsome," she said with a sleepy yet sultry voice, readjusting herself to make herself seem inviting. Merrick looked at her with a smile on his face, but he did not act on any of her desires. He had already had his fill with the night before, and was to attend to his duties at the barracks. Not to mention that his presence in the mayor's house might draw unwanted attention. "Good morning," Merrick replied, turning his way to the door of the bedroom. The young woman called out to him, but he did not reply nor turn to her, as he hurried down the hallway, down the stairs of the modest home, and walked out the front door as if nothing out of the ordinary happened. It was not a few steps into the outdoors that he was interjected by a balding fat man, whose face was contorted into a sight of anger and fury, matched only by the righteous swordsman. The man was Lorik, and he had just found out that Merrick had left with his daughter to spend the night with her at his own house, and he was none too pleased with the reality staring right at him. "You, vagabond!" shouted Lorik, walking up to Merrick to block his path. Merrick did not register his presence, and only walked past him, buttoning up his tunic as he proceeded down the road, making his way to the barracks. Lorik turned and continued to shout at Merrick, demanding his attention. Did you sleep with my daughter? Answer me. Merrick stopped and slowly turned his head towards the man, a neutral expression on his face. She and I happened to spend the night together. What we did is not really much of your business, now is it? Replied Merrick, turning to continue walking, only to feel a rough hand land on his shoulder, forcing him to turn around to face Lorik. You think you can do whatever you want? To disrespect me and my family? Lorik demanded, his hands clenched into fists. Merrick merely stared at him, looking up to the sky as if contemplating how to answer his question. Last I checked, your daughter is a grown woman, and she happened to like my company. Not even showing any remorse, are you? Lorik said, with a trailing voice. Suddenly, he raised one of his hands, trying to send a fist flying towards Merrick's face, only for it to be caught effortlessly and thrown to the side. Lorik tried to punch him again, this time not only having his fist caught, but had a swift jab delivered to his own face, knocking him back. It was then that the two men got into a proper fight, gripping each other's arms in an effort to throw each other off balance. To Lorik's misfortune, however, Merrick proved to be much stronger than he, and he was quickly thrown off his feet, right into the muddy soil, before having a kick delivered to his stomach. Merrick assumed that this was the end of it, turning to walk away once more. Lorik got back to his feet and looked at Merrick, rage swirling in his eyes. He reached for a knife that was strapped to his belt, and then lunged at him with a roar, causing Merrick to sidestep to let Lorik move past him, and for him to grab hold of the arm that held the knife, twisting it and disarming the man before delivering a brutal punch to his face, knocking him into the ground. Merrick did not decide to leave the man be this time. He stood over him, placing himself above him, and proceeded to deliver deliberate, slow, brutal punches to Lorik's face. The commotion had attracted the crowd, and they all stood by, horrified at the display of Merrick beating Lorik past submission. He did not pause in between to watch Lorik. He did pause in between to watch Lorik cough and gasp for breath, his face bloodied and beaten, trying to force out curses at the man above him. Merrick was about to continue beating the man further, when a voice stopped him. Merrick, that's enough, said the voice from among the crowd. Merrick stood up and looked towards the direction where the voice originated from, seeing an approaching man in his 50s, dressed in decorated armor that looked as if it belonged to a veteran of a war long past. It was Sigmund, the captain of the militia, accompanied by two more guards, with their swords at the ready. Sigmund, sir, Merrick said in greeting, nodding his head. Sigmund did not respond to his greeting, only stepped forward and delivered a punch to his face, to which Merrick only flinched, but registered the message. Stop whatever you are doing and come with me. Stop whatever you're doing and come with me, was the message of the blow that drew blood from the side of his lip. He looked at the battered man on the ground and shrugged his shoulders as he accompanied Sigmund and the two militia men to the barracks, where he was likely to find an engaging lecture about his misdemeanor. He was led to Sigmund's office, where he was seated and left alone with him, Sigmund, who stood by his desk, staring at some papers, gathering them up and then sifting through them, silently, letting the tension in the room boil. Tell me, Merrick, why should I keep you employed? Sigmund said, finally, his eyes darting up towards Merrick, who sat in his chair with a still, neutral expression, appearing as uninterested as he did when Lorik accosted him. Because you need able-bodied men to keep the town safe, and I happen to be one of these stronger lads that you've managed to find coming through, he replied, leaning back with a smile forming on his face. Sigmund did not smile. He slammed the papers down onto his desk and raised his voice, stepping over to Merrick to loom over him. And what is an able-bodied man worth? If he decides to not only sleep around with the women of the village, but even assault the mayor of the village himself. I seem to have lost my track.
You were on the part where Merrick was getting scolded for throwing hands with the mayor.
Yeah, but you assault the mayor of the village himself. What do you want me to do about it? Sigmund stared at Merrick, delivering another fast punch to his face, enough to almost knock Merrick off his seat. Either settle down or get out. It has been 2 weeks with you here, and we had nothing but trouble. Disrespect towards authority, with the men coming to us demanding that we either do something about you, or they will take matters to their own hands. You think Lorik is the only one who took issue with your behavior? I've been trying to quell the hot blood between the residents, but at this point I'm starting to feel very much willing to throw you to the wolves and let them deal with you as they see fit. Merrick spat on the floor, saliva mixed with blood, as he got to his feet and stared Sigmund down. The two men stood there for some time, until Merrick relented with a sigh. Right, what do I need to do to make amends? Merrick said half-heartedly, to which Sigmund replied by turning back to the table with the papers, picking them out and shuffling through them, before he pulled out one paper and forcefully pressed it against Merrick's chest. Your assignment for today. Apparently there's a group of men camped out 5 minutes walk away from Lorendor. Some of the townsfolk have been complaining about them harassing any passing travelers and residents that come too close to them. If you want to stay here and get any kind of pay out of me, you'll go there, see what they want, maybe forcefully move their camp somewhere else. And then, just maybe, you'll have a chance of making me want to keep you in employment here. Merrick held the paper and looked through what was written on it. It was some notes detailing the several complaints of the band that Sigmund spoke of. Harassment, threats of violence, assault on merchant caravan walking past. Were just a few of the grievances listed. And I'm supposed to go and deal with them myself? Merrick inquired, only for Sigmund to scoff loudly. You think I'm gonna waste any of my good men to send them off with you? They got better things to do than babysit a common dog. Merrick grimaced at the remark, but shrugged it off as he folded the paper and turned to leave the office and leave the barracks. Before he did manage to step out of the office, Sigmund's voice rang out with one final warning. And don't come back if those men aren't ejected from our village's outskirts. You cretinous vagabond. Yeah, whatever you say, Merrick thought to himself as he left and made his way towards the town outskirts, where the aforementioned camp of thugs is supposed to be located. On his way there, he walked past the tavern, where he could feel the glaring prying eyes staring at him from inside. He looked at the windows and saw the local men, all staring him down. He had a strong suspicion that they all must have been plotting, trying to come up with a way to get rid of him, given his activities and the time he has spent here. He could not help but smile, as even if they were planning something, he was not concerned in the slightest. After all, if they did try anything, they would find themselves woefully disappointed in the outcome of the conflict. He arrived to the outskirts, where the grassy fields bordered the forest, and he could already hear the loud, boisterous sounds of men chanting in song, voices that came from somewhere hidden among the trees. He continued his pace with confidence, his hand resting idle on the hilt of his sword, following the voices further into the forest. His search led him to a clearing, and he could see amongst the cut down bushes a makeshift camp. From his hiding spot, he could see that the camp was occupied by 4 men, all singing loudly with mugs in their hands, clearly intoxicated. This can't be right, Merrick thought to himself. The way the report talked about the troublemakers, it sounded like there were many more of them. He sat hiding amongst the bushes for some time, observing the 4 drunkards as they continued slurring out what consisted of a song about buxom wenches from the faraway land of Zephyri. Eventually, he got tired of listening to the men, and he emerged, walking out into the clearing with a neutral expression, and his sudden appearance had not gone unnoticed, and the 4 men scrambled to their feet, eyeing Merrick cautiously and with suspicion. "Hey, who are you?" slurred one of the men, slowly raising one hand, pointing at Merrick accusingly. "No one in particular," Merrick replied flatly, slapping the hand away. "I have heard that you 4 are causing a bit of a disturbance with the nearby town. Am I correct in that assumption?" "Who are you to ask?" "Shove off," replied another man as he stumbled towards Merrick in an effort to seem intimidating, only for Merrick to push him away, knocking him to the ground effortlessly. "Well, what's the big idea here?" shouted another man, shocked by the display. Merrick turned to the rest of the drunkards, his face showing discontent with what he is seeing. Discontent and annoyance. To think I have to waste my time with this, was the prevailing thought in his head, as his eyes darted between the remaining 3 standing men. "You, get out of here," Merrick demanded. The drunks stood there, blinking, as if they did not understand what he was demanding. Merrick tapped on the hilt of his sword and repeated himself. "I want you out of here. Get out before you hurt yourselves." "Well, maybe we don't want to leave," shouted the first drunk man, stumbling forward to try and punch Merrick, only for him to fumble as Merrick merely shifted his body sideways, letting the man fall to his feet. Letting the man fall to the ground. "They're so drunk they can't even put up a fight," Merrick thought as he turned his attention towards the other 2, who fumbled their arms towards their weapons and began to swing wildly at him, forcing him to take a step back and draw out his own sword. The 2 men, soon joined by the 3rd man who had regained his footing, slowly wobbled towards him, barely able to hold their weapons up. One of the men stepped forward to strike at Merrick, only to find himself disarmed as Merrick parried the attack and turned the sword, knocking it out of his hand before knocking the man to the ground. Then came the 2nd man, who tried his own luck, only for Merrick to catch his arm and then hit him with the pommel of his own sword, breaking the man's nose as he sent him flying to the ground. The 3rd man came, trying to stab at Merrick with a dagger. Merrick too caught the man's arm and as a punishment to the poor man who tried assaulting him, he decided to cut off the man's hand, letting it drop, still holding the dagger. The man screamed out in agony, causing them all to sober up and rise to their feet in order to aid their injured companion. Merrick seized his sword and stared at them, who were all scrambling to aid their companion and halt the bleeding the best they could. Let that serve as a warning, Merrick began, catching their attention. I don't want to hear any more about any thugs bothering the villagers or the travelers coming past. If I have to come back here, I'll make sure that your bodies will serve as a greeting to the next merchant coming past. Am I clear? The man did not respond to his proclamation, but Merrick thought that this was enough to send a proper message to them. Whoever these men were, they were bound to now leave and likely relocate. Satisfied, he returned to Lorindor and figured that the matter was settled. His return was not greeted with a hero's welcome, but rather with passive disdain by the locals, and Sigmund himself did not regard him with any form of response, only cared if the task was settled or not. The rest of the day carried on as usual. He would patrol the village, make his presence known, watch over any of the travelers that might come past the village, and eventually retiring to the tavern, where he quickly found himself very much unwelcome by the patrons and the workers there. He sat at his usual spot, leaning against the table, waiting for the servers to come and deliver his drink. At least that's what he would be doing if they were not ignoring his summons and requests. Instead, he decided to sit there with his eyes closed, contemplating on his life. He was considering whether or not he truly did cross lines and boundaries that he should not have crossed, whether his behavior, his actions, were truly reprehensible, and that he should look to making amends with the villagers here. Then another thought came to him, one that shouted to him, "It does not really matter to this in the end of the day. You are a mere sellsword, a man who appears and then leaves. May as well make the most of your time, wherever you might be." He opened his eyes and scanned the tavern floor. His eyes landed on the tavern keeper's daughter, her name still eluding him. He waved to her with a smile, only for her to look away and ignore his presence. Likely mad that I roughed her father up. Oh. Okay. Well, in that case, I will stop there. Your thoughts and opinions?
You put all this together in 6 hours?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Not
pretty
bad.
impressive.
Not bad.
Yeah, just a few word choice things here and there, and wasn't totally clear on what this story is necessarily about, other than it's about this traveling mercenary who seems like the village folk don't like him and don't respect him either. I was a little bit confused by that.
So it seems he's a policeman but the police don't like him much either, so they send him after these dingy, no-name petty criminals.
Yeah. Basically, this is basically just a chapter of a whole novel, and they are basically separated in their own standalone stories. So this one is more of a introduction to this character and the lead up to where the protagonists are going to end up meeting in a city. Although I have to admit, my reading wasn't exactly doing me any favors with me stumbling over my own words.
Well, we've all been there.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just at some points there were just some word choices there. I was just like, that's odd.
Yeah,
I think,
they also did end up throwing me off a bit.
yeah, like a trailing voice. I was a bit confused by that. I was like, what does
I
that mean?
think I've heard of a voice trailing away, but I don't think I've seen a trailing voice used in that way.
Basically, think of
Echo.
it like this.
Yeah,
That's trailing
voice
away.
trailed away. I think I've heard
Yeah, so I would adjust that somewhat. I think said and greeting, you could just say greeted. I think there's mainly it's a lot of like condensing sentences.
so it flows better.
Yeah.
Your action has very little weight.
That is another problem. It's very clinical. Is Merrick meant to be a psychopath or a sociopath? Is that what you're going for? Or is he not like, or is that not what you were going for? Because that kind of seemed like that was how you wrote him. Was he seems like he is psychopathic?
Well, I do have a. I guess you could say there is a part where there is going to be, I guess, a character trait reveal at some point. I haven't quite gotten to that part yet, as I am currently editing the third story where that happens.
Well, it's not even really like a reveal. Like, what exactly are you trying to portray him as? Like, what's the point?
A big man of action who hits people hard and basically towers over them.
Um,
Your action is very unengaging, and you lost me after the second punch.
I'm just going to go and say it right now. This just sounds like Berserk, but not.
I don't know how to take that.
Neither do I, honestly, because I haven't seen Berserk. But
Berserk
Yeah.
is awesome.
It
your
is,
action
but
has like zero weight anytime you do it.
yeah, it doesn't really have a whole lot of tension to it, unfortunately.
like
It's
how
just
how much do you want me to sugarcoat it, K-Ram?
I want none of it.
All right, so it's Berserk, but without anything in it that's of interest. It is basically Berserk without any of the interesting bits. I found myself completely unable to engage or pay attention to the story. All that I got was, okay, so this guy is a guy who just slept with the daughter of the mayor, and he gets into a fight with them. And apparently, people don't like him, and he's just there.
And then he joins the police.
Well, this is the reason why I prefer the other protagonist more. This guy really is just more. He's just there for the action bits. The character and drama is the other character's forte.
Okay, well, all I'm going to say is that just
There's no
having a
weight to your
character who
action,
exists,
though.
which doesn't exactly help your case, but what I personally, I don't really think that a character should just solely exist for action and that's it. There should be something else going on with them. Or her.
But even then, if you want a character only for action, then you need to do the action well. He needs to have a presence. His actions need to have some sort of reaction from the other characters. They need to feel like they're doing something, and they don't.
Yeah, and actually, now that I think about it, since I've already brought up the subject of Berserk, one of the most notable things in the Berserk manga is the reaction of everybody else. People look at Guts as a kid and think, "What the frick? He's just a kid," and then he takes down some decades-old veteran. He's like, "Oh my god, what the fuck is wrong with this kid?" They see him carrying around the sword, and it's like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Everybody just looks at him, and there is a very visceral reaction that they all have to seeing him in action or just seeing him standing there.
And I didn't necessarily get a sense of presence from Merrick, unfortunately. A lot of it is he just reads as a very clinical sociopath. That's I don't know if that's what you were going for, but I did not. I don't. It was very hard for me to connect with him as a character because I don't necessarily get his deal. Or his motivation, or why he cares.
It's not even just him as the character, but the way everyone else. You don't really. Everything surrounding what he does, like chopping off a hand, doesn't seem to have any actual.
Oh my god! He chopped off somebody's hand.
What did he?
The dagger's still in it.
Yeah, it was part of this scene. I remember I was reading that. I was like, that was a really clinical way of describing cutting off somebody's hand. That's one of the reasons why I was like, this guy reads like a sociopath.
Okay, I think this is. Keep going. Sorry.
And it just seems like he's got stunted emotions, and he's not fully functional as a person.
Like, if you're gonna have him cut off somebody's hand, I better hear the guy screaming, "Ah, you motherfucker! You cut off my head, you piece of garbage!" Something like that. I need that's nobody is just going to get their hand cut off and then he screamed and then he fell.
I think this proves my point where you managed to read this to several people, and several of them missed the cutting off of a hand.
Well,
there's a way to. You don't do the scene well to make that a notable thing.
Well, to be fair, I was in another room, but still. Has this gone through a lot of editing before?
He wrote this in just 6 hours.
Okay, so yeah, maybe.
I was going to say something very, very cutting and biting by saying, yeah, it shows that you just wrote this in 6 hours.
Well, maybe he can, if he edits it, maybe he could get some of the weight that people are missing.
Yeah, there's also just, I don't really know what the hook is for the story, other than this sociopathic guy might not get kicked out of town.
There is also the question of what you actually intend to do with this thing. If it's just a one-off thing that you wrote as almost as an exercise, or if you're intending on polishing it up and making something longer out of it.
Like I said, this is a chapter to a whole story, whole novel thing.
That's fair. I think that there are a couple of problems with it. I think Mary's characterization is kind of a problem. It's going to be really hard for characters to root for him. There's also the problem of there isn't a whole lot of internal monologue or internal characterization. And what little is there isn't terribly sympathetic or winning, and I'm not sure if that was your goal. Whether that was
my goal.
Not. Oh, so he is a bad guy.
Well, he starts off as bad guy. Yeah.
Okay, then you're gonna have to make him funny or engaging in some way, because.
Well, you're assuming he wants him likable. That's not really my main point there. You can have a.
Well, I didn't say. I didn't say likable. I said funny.
Memorable in some way.
I'm not sure funny is essential, depending on what he's going for.
In order to make a character engaging who's a bad person, and have them be along for the ride, they have to be either funny or really frightening.
Or extremely charismatic.
Yeah.
Like
And
freaking Dio Brando, he's an absolute sociopathic monster, but yet the sheer charisma that this man carries and the pompousness of all of his evil actions makes him incredibly entertaining.
and I don't know if this guy is necessarily he's not really he's not very complex from what I can see, and there isn't a sense of charisma or wit. Like a kind of the main characters I'm thinking of are Sandan Glokta, where he's a bad person, but he's incredibly funny, like in his internal monologue.
Who?
Sandan Glokta from the first Law series. It's better than A Song of Ice and Fire.
Blasphemy, but possibly true.
Well, it has an ending.
Well, okay. Okay.
Okay, that's a bit unfair in
That's easy.
comparison.
That's fair.
In that
No,
case,
no.
literally everything is better than it.
Well, it's similar genre, and Joe Abercrombie has written about 9 books, whereas George R. R. Martin has sat on his lazy ass eating donuts for the past 10 years. There's
No
And
one's
also resting on
arguing
his
that.
laurels.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, he's apparently depressed lately too, but still, yeah.
Yeah, I think that fan thing was kind of an elitist snob move of Mister. The stuff where he talked about the fans, about like talking about quote unquote toxic fans is elitist snobbery from Mr. Martin, and I don't buy it. I can sympathize somewhat with the death of his author friends and the fact that he's admitted that he has not left much of a legacy behind other than an unfinished book series.
Well, an unfinished masterpiece, but yeah, still unfinished.
Yeah. And just what he's saying, like people are cheering when certain projects fail. It's like, yes, because they deserve to fail. They're terrible, bad quality movies.
So I have
That would make
received
me
your
think
feedback.
try writing a bit faster so you can finish before you die.
So I have received your feedback, and I will take into consideration. But I do have a question.
Okay.
Do I at least write better than the first 3 pages of Shadow of the Conqueror?
Um
Who?
No.
Shad.
Oh.
Let me
I think the only
So-
person who can answer that question properly would be aspiring writer, considering he's actually read Shadow the Conqueror. Unless if I am missing something.
I have
The
listened
reason
to
he
the book
brings it
3
up-
times. I've listened to the book
The reason-
3 times. So
The reason he brings it up
Okay.
is because it was brought up in a VC recently, and they read a few pages. Dalen is, dare I say, more charismatic in his first 3 pages than whatever the hell you have.
So yeah, part of it is the fact that Dalen is an unlikable ass, but he does have a sense of humor and he is very distinctive. You get into the fact I think he's kind of a weird perv, even and kind of when you actually read into it more, a lot of Shad's book, bless his heart, is kind of weird pervy crap.
Yes, very.
No comment.
And
No,
it's
no, no.
kind of-
This is the part where I say no comment, Balerian.
Yeah, because I've never actually read it, and neither do I wish to. No offense to
It's-
Chad Shap.
yeah, it's super
Full
weird.
offense.
It's super weird. Yeah, I didn't think about it until I had other people point it out. Since I think I was, part of it was I was just like, I liked listening to the book as written by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. I didn't read it, and some of the stuff in it, I was just like, that's fine, I suppose. But then it's just like, oh, there's a lot of stuff I missed here that I did not pick up on.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Too much charitability will do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some things that I don't agree with from certain people, like the fact that he impales Blackheart as sexual assault. I don't really count that. Though later on, I'm like, there's some the anti-communist stuff is a little bit too much on the nose.
I wouldn't call Blackheart a sexual assault. I'd just say it's incredibly fucking morbid and defeats a lot of what he's going for in some ways.
That
Since
is
it's like
fair.
literal torture.
Yeah.
I get it's he's trying to make that a thing with the character, where it's like he's incredibly violent and does a bunch of cruel shit really easily, but the way he goes about it, with how the character thinks, is
It's contradictory at many points. He seems like he
Yeah.
has really bad depression, but but it's not really written well, as well as PTSD is not handled well, and the reaction from the various women that are at the trial at the end is kind of weird when you really think about it.
Yeah, and the reason he did it with Blackheart, it wasn't even like a moment of pure anger at a reaction to something. It was, I think, just a moment of him being like, I am Daedalus the Conqueror, fuck you. And then he just pierces someone who claimed to be his son because he got angry at that. This was after that he finds out about a bunch of kidnappings from like the ship, which is when he slaughters a whole crew. So he personally just decided to pierce someone through his anal hole without getting pissed off by something. He just decided to do it.
Goddamn.
Yes, and again, the first 3 pages of Shadow Conqueror, problems, there are quite a few. I still would prefer reading those to what you just read to us.
Harsh, but fair.
Yeah. Also, if you feel like we're being a little too mean, don't worry. We've all been there. I've been the butt of many jokes for a very long time, quite literally in a few cases.
I feel
Yeah,
like
Trip,
we're-
I'll be commenting about your booty.
Something worth publishing.
Everyone
But-
here has that abused wife moment where we just treat you as miserably as possible, and then afterwards we're like, it's okay, don't worry, here, have this alcohol.
No, it's more like they're not as bad as they used to be.
Yeah, it's, I mean, kind of everyone goes through this, more or less, except maybe Coral Sailor.
Yeah,
I've seen the
Coral
garbage
is
I was putting out when I was a teenager.
Carl and Tarek are both very special in that they take their sweet precious time getting everything together before then presenting. Also, Carl can actually do accents.
mm-hmm.
Apparently so.
He has the delivery. Yeah. I mean, mine are usually pretty, have also been done for a while too, but I don't know.
Anyway, it's nearly midnight on my end, so I'm gonna go to sleep now. I need to work tomorrow.
Fair
All right,
enough.
see you,
No worries. Good night.
see you
Good
later,
night.
buddy.
Night Toe.
All right. So,
Man.
Valeria. Oh, sorry, go for it.
Oh, and I wanted to make a random joke, but you know, screw it. Let's move on.
Okay. So, Balerion, and then Aspiring, and then Messia. Sound good?
Yeah, I'll do
That's fine.
I'll do probably a quick read, and then I'll probably have to leave shortly after that.
Hopefully, none of my siblings come smashing at my door saying, "We want food. Give us food."
What? How dare they?
I know,
How
right?
dare they
So
ask for food?
Make me sick.
Instead of asking mom and dad to get them food. Anyway,
We're just grabbing some water. All right. So, Yeah, it's been a while. Hopefully, people will know more or less what's going on. That Margaret has been attacked by this by the Sandoranian army sent by the Emperor because he wants to join the harem or something like that. So let's see. It's been a while since I read this bit. So let's see. And they've been fighting with this chap who's a psychopath named Daraimi, who's been attacking them. But then they did a raid on the camp of the bad guys. Now they are... So, and this is sort of the aftermath. Except, despite a mild feeling of unease, Margaret felt pretty good about the way the siege was going when she awoke the next day and went to the study to meditate upon the Book of Sauron before her next meeting with her officers. She felt secure enough that she actually bothered to have her hair tied properly, something she'd been neglecting since the news came of the destruction of Senyel had come. But she had barely started the first chapter when she heard the urgent beating of a drum on the outside and Barama's voice, thick with grief, calling, "My lady, may I enter?" "Of course, but you ought to rest." "No time for resting." Barama staggered in, his face a study in horror, his robe a tangled mess. Muku, blessed Muku, was right. War is not as fun as I thought. Margaret raised her hands in dismay and gasped, "What happened?" "The village of Onan by the river." "Yes?" "The villagers raided the northeast encampment to draw away some of the forces stationed there. The commander was enraged and sent a large contingent and Barama covered his face. "And they massacred the entire village." Margaret brought her head to her mouth. "Oh no," she said in a low voice, almost a whisper. "So that's why the encampment was so easy." "My forces were too late to help and were depleted anyway." Barama was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I don't think I like war anymore." And that was a brief section, but now we move on to see what the Emperor thinks about things. "How durst they punish the peasants?" observed Ikwekwe during a briefing in the imperial antechamber with the Garaji or Prime Minister and a messenger from the Isle of Oro, or rather in several briefings. More than once, he wondered why people had to persecute him with this stuff when he had far better things to do, chiefly involving Saranjis and worse. He almost wished he hadn't had his Weasley traitor son who wanted him dead so that he could get the throne, and that sniveling little priestling who admittedly had fetched some enjoyable Saranjis but made up for it with hypocritical bleatings, imprisoned, and why he was surrounded by incompetence. And where were the toys? And all the rebels should instantly die, and he was emperor, so he should have everything he wanted instantly. And he was feeling under the weather lately. No emperor should ever feel under the weather. And where were the toys? By which he meant Margaret and Barama. Where was that ruby tapestry he had ordered years ago? He never got anything. "We shall order the rebels to be crushed and condignly punished, exalted," said the Garaji or Prime Minister, whose name was Garada Bemwerumi. The Garaji hated his job. When Mpu'u and Malalaama, that is the prince and the high priest, had been more or less in favor, they had taken care of the serious stuff, and the Garaji had been free to enjoy his favorite pastimes of betting and Saranjis, being only required to look important at state events. Even that had been a waste of time that might have been better spent on other entertainments. Now, though, "Punish them now! Now! And bring me toys!" Exalted began coughing and wheezing, then sneezed, then did several even more disgusting bodily things. I want what I want now! Yes, Exalted, said Garawada Bewerumi in a tired voice. This lowly slave regrets that the rebels are so rebellious. The Emperor snorted, then threw another coughing fit. The news of Tserthaton's successful, if hardly bloodless, resistance had reached Exalted ear, and it was not amused. One element of the reports that was particularly galling was the role played by the lower classes. It was felt, even by those who might have sympathized with Margaret, that her arming and training peasants wasn't playing quite fair. Bad form. Even worse, peasants everywhere, encouraged by the revolt, were rebelling on their own account. Not just in the province of Ihalamu either. The news had somehow spread thence to other parts of the empire and inspired further outbreaks. Fighting, whether justified or not, inevitably entails violence and cruelty, and it would be a lie to say that none of the peasant revolts ever overstepped the bounds. Although they were hardly worse than the cruelty to which they were a reaction. It is not, however, surprising that the accounts of any atrocities committed by the peasants were exaggerated, whilst atrocities carried out by the lords were ignored or viewed as justified. Garawada Bewerumi was only mildly bothered by all this, though. Who cared what was going on in some dingy province where reportedly they didn't even speak Sindaranian? He had a boat race between the Greens and the Yellows to fix. Continue your report, he told the messenger drearily. Yes, exalted great one, said the messenger. When the Baron of Chisea mercifully had a peasant flogged with 81 lashes for not consenting to grant his wife the honor of involuntarily enjoying the Baron's embraces, the peasant threw a stone at him. And then all his friends threw stones too. Punish them! Torture them! Kill them! Squeaked the Emperor, as he always did upon receiving news of any rebellion or resistance, however slight. Rape them! Burn them! Pillage them! Make them suffer! Kill them and rape their corpses! He tried to laugh, then coughed, then sneezed, then coughed again, then retched, then cursed. There wasn't any chance of betting on the boat races that day. Yes, exalted, said the Garaji. This contemptible slave will order it at once. And they did. Tortured and killed and raped, that is. Whenever there was even the mildest protest or request for amelioration, the imperial response was always the same. The malcontents were immediately tarred with rebel brush, that is, and sentenced to death and destruction and worse. There were many conversations along the lines of, Exalted, the peasants on the estate of Chichacha made a petition requesting that their rents be reduced by 1/3. Work was hard, reflected Garawada Bewerumi. If Exalted could free the prince and this lowly servant's burthens could be lightened. No, said the Emperor. I told you that before. Stop asking that. Mpu'u is a traitor. Burn the peasants to the ground and rape the ashes. Now, and bring me a castrated kanwari. A kanwari is kind of a large, flightless bird. Yes, exalted. The result was not the docility one might reasonably have expected. The kanwari wasn't very docile either. Even animals were rebels these days. Instead, copycat rebellions broke out everywhere. If asking the Lord if they might please keep an extra bashi for a sick daughter receive the same punishment, death, torture, rape, and destruction as an actual revolt, well, then we might as well revolt and be done with it. Driving the people the despair had that kind of effect for some strange reason. To make things worse, the nobility in fairly large swaths of the empire were also disaffected. They might not have minded slavery and serfdom so much, or at all. But the Mindarite parts of the empire, about half of it already felt put upon by the Sindaranian half. Now they found themselves being viewed as disloyal half-peasants and were not pleased. For example, "I'm the Marquis of Suspor," said the local aristocrat indignantly. "My daughter isn't for sale." I'm of the Baron of Tabundanda's retinue. Your little wench is ours. Do I look like a slave to you?" "Yes," sneered the Sandranian goon. "I'm tired of you half-chugging bigwigs lording over the descendants of kings," said the noble, and revolted. This happened several times, so that Equique was constantly being interrupted in the middle of largely unsuccessful and cough-ridden attempts at debauchery by news of some revolt or other. And As a result, Exalta began almost to miss his son Mpu'u and the irritating priest chap. With them around, he wouldn't have been expected to deal with all this stuff. Why were all underlings so stupid? Probably disloyal, too. Couldn't they see he was busy in the Barusa? Why must they always bother him with boring rubbish? And I think that will do.
Yes, I can see where your opinions on those troublesome commoners spring from. You've no doubt had quite a contest with them in your own works.
Oh yes, they're always causing trouble.
What a vile, contemptible, not even pitiful, disgusting human being.
I know, I love it. Give us more.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. He's extremely entertaining.
I'm no wonder he's losing this war.
I did actually burst out laughing with the whole raped them, killed them, and then raped their corpses.
Lenin?
Yeah, that's one of the better line. I think that's one of the Hound. I think that's a show only line from the Hound. I don't remember him saying that in the books.
When a man dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his fucking corpse. Yeah, that wouldn't have been in the books.
No, I guess not. So yeah, that's the kind of guy he is. The Emperor, that is. And he doesn't have his counselors either, because it's been a long time, but the last time I read, he had his counselors, his son, Prince Mpu'u, and the chief priest or Yaji, whose name is Malala Ama. He'd had them arrested because he didn't like their advice.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I have to wonder, with the sheer levels of violence and brutality, where is this story taking place again?
It's taking place it's an imaginary country. It's the Sandaranian Empire. If I don't have a map on me, I do have a map but I don't have it ready to show.
Right. It almost sounds like this guy lost a mandate of heaven, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't exactly have that. Well, I guess technically they should have a concept like that, where the emperor enjoys the favor of what are called Sacred Nine, which Nyaja, Ishtaka, Angara, and a bunch of other. There's 6 other. What's the word I'm looking for? Manifestations of the Godhead. And they're all called Sacred Nine when you put them all together. And the prophet is called the Karat. And supposedly, the emperor should be getting approval from them. But then, of course, because he's emperor, he claims that he has approval from them anyway, even though this emperor doesn't really like them all that much.
Damn.
I wonder why.
They're such killjoys.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy's definitely a violent, brutal zealot and dictator.
Yep.
Just
He also can barely get up and move around, partly because he's obese and partly because he's indulged in so much of this and that he's not in the best of health, physical health.
This is an adult, right? Not a child.
Technically.
Technically, this is an adult. Like, how old is this guy?
I think he's in his 50s.
Oh my! I was genuinely confused. Like, I heard some footage he was saying and how he was talking. I was like, this sounds like a literal child. I didn't know that you just took freaking Boogie09 and dropped him into your story and made him emperor.
I mean, who?
Boogie09. You went. It's alright.
He is a guy whose life was documented for YouTube. He used to be really popular, and then a number of sexual assault scandals, as well as some major problems with his mental health.
Oh, this is an actual person.
Yeah, it's an actual person who has major dysfunctions in terms of his cognitive abilities, his spending ability, his budgeting capabilities. It's kind of a whole thing where he's just massively incompetent in almost everything he sets his stand to, other than his YouTube channel. And even that has kind of died over the course of the last few years.
We've all been there.
I only know the sheer depths of this depravity thanks to EFAP covering the freaking documentary where they go over all this shit. It's like, Jesus Christ, man.
Does he have a thing for cross-dressing monkeys?
I do not know. All I know is that the only thing that gives him joy in life is material good, which is damn, not good.
Oh well.
Bad.
We can definitely sympathize with that. Who doesn't want lots of stuff right now?
I don't.
You must be barking mad.
I have too much stuff.
I'll take a few specific things, but not a whole lot. I'll take a house. I'll take a house and a car. That'll be fine.
The only things that I could ask for are completely immaterial, and that is time, freaking love, and I guess
luck.
Yeah, maybe even getting lots of luck. Considering how things have been going for me.
You mean you want lots of random stuff? Just if someone came and poured a bunch of random things into your flat, you wouldn't be thrilled?
I would be pissed off.
That's not very grateful, but yeah, I can see what you mean. Especially since I have a bunch of random things in my flat already.
I have too much shit on me already. I don't need more. I can take care of myself. Go give it to somebody who actually needs it.
Yeah, imagine some guy.
There's starving kids all across the world, and you're dumping random commodities on my freaking flat. Do something good.
Just see some guy shoving a huge pallet full of gold bricks in through my window. It says, "Here, it's a $2 billion worth in gold bullion. Isn't that great?" And I'm like, dude, thanks for ruining my walls, asshole. Where am I going to put this shit?
That's why you need to have lots of palaces.
What the heck am I going to do with freaking $2 billion worth of gold bricks?
Put them
I'm not even sure if I can even sell them without getting freaking murked by the freaking IRS or something.
But if you're emperor, you don't have to worry about the IRS.
My friend, even Joker is worried about the IRS. Even Joker isn't crazy enough to take on the IRS.
But the emperor can just put the IRS to death. He probably did.
The emperor is the IRS.
Oh yeah, technically he is the IRS. And
Oh,
I don't
yes,
know,
nice.
after seeing how organizations like the FBI, CIA, and ATF operate, I'm just like, can you really take them on? Can you really? Do you really like your chances? Do you really want to take on these guys? The NSA know where you live.
Yeah, this is the scene that they're talking about.
$137 million.
Yes, and if I don't pay up, I'll go to jail for tax evasion. I'm crazy enough to take on Batman, but the IRS, no, thank you.
Ah.
He's insane and he gets it.
Yeah. I'll go to jail
They
for
got Al
tax
Capone, they'll get you
evasion.
too.
I mean, that's how they got Al Capone.
I know it's great. I love that. That's such a brilliant piece of writing. It's such a great reference.
Yeah.
I love it. Is the one thing Joker's concerned about is freaking tax evasion because that's how the feds get you.
That's what the government will let you get away with murder, terrorism, all that shit. The second you fuck with their taxes, then they will actually take you seriously. Then there's like,
Yeah.
no insane asylum. That time you go to jail.
Then
You
they
won't go to
roll
Arkham.
up. They roll up on your front lawn with 15 M1 Abrams or some crap. There's at least 10 A10 Warthogs available on like the freaking runway in some airbase like 15 miles away. And there's probably at least half a dozen freaking National Guard regiments just casually sitting there waiting.
Why would they do
Joker.
that when it's just easier just to freeze your bank accounts? They have all that
Because
information
I don't-
anyways.
I don't fucking know.
You're greatly overestimating the intelligence of the intelligence community.
Joker, open up. You are being charged with not giving the US government $1 million, which is less than 1% of their budget. We do not care about the few thousand people who you've killed.
Yeah, I need to.
We do
I
not
need
care
to
that we've
also-
just sent tens of billions of dollars to some foreign country somewhere, so that way they may continue their rampant genocide and or defense against a foreign invader. We want your money.
Yeah, I'm still working on my tax return, and apparently I owe $350 in taxes, even though I get my taxes deducted from my paycheck.
I
Yeah,
expect
that's
to
what
get a
taxes
refund. I've always got a refund. My complaint is that the tax forms are insanely complicated and always involve things like attach send you this, attach send you that, attach this form, attach this one.
Well, you know what?
There is-
I'm actually going to just stop now. If we keep talking about how much we hate the government and taxes, we might accidentally summon the spirit of Noble.
What? You think Noble even knows what taxes are, mate?
He's a
He
freaking
probably-
libertine. That's the only thing he ever complains about.
Libertarian, but yes.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah,
he's
we
a
should-
diehard libertarian.
Yeah,
The
we're
one
2
to-
hours into this. We should probably move on.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
I'm unfortunately going to have to go on my merry way. Sorry, Lord.
Okay.
Aw.
See you
Yeah, I
later.
need to. Yeah, I just
Later.
need to figure it out.
And
Yeah,
let's
I don't-
touch base later about that thing we discussed.
Yeah, we can talk about it in private
Yeah.
chat.
Wait, what thing you guys discussed?
Don't think about it.
Yeah, I'm
Just-
just trying to.
Oh, that's a secret.
Okay.
He was talking about his taxes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why I owe $352 when I've
Just-
given about $1633 in taxes already, according to this slip.
Look at the W2 or W4 form.
Oh, it's weird. It's just like according to the federal tax income, it says 1633, and then Social Security tax 259, Medicare tax withheld 481.
I fucking hate the social security tax.
Yeah.
Now that I'm
Okay.
getting older, I'm inclined to like it more.
All right.
Yeah, because you're finally getting money. You don't even get all of it.
Yeah, but at least we get some of it. So anyway, I'm gonna have to dash off and do things.
All right.
Okay,
See
bye.
you later, my buddy. See ya.
Nighto.
All right. Aspiring, then we'll see ya, and then me, and then we'll call it good.
Sure.
We might even just have to skip me this week since I think I have dinner in about an hour. So.
I'll probably get through mine pretty quickly.
No worries.
All right.
Yeah, and Wesley's already read this, so he can do whatever he wants at the back.
Yay!
Yeah, lucky you.
Right.
Okay. Most basic refresher. Chapter 41. Our three main characters are in the base. If you recall this, I'm not going to refresh what each three has done because that would take too long. But Vampira has been sent on a mission, and Triple is now being taken to meet the same people. If you recall the meeting between Vampira and basically the higher-ups on the base. Triple stood in the darkened meeting room, absorbing what she'd been told. She'd been moved into the barracks since landing at Avalon, and had been secluding herself there while Will was occupied. Then, earlier that day, someone came with a summons. Following the dissenter through the unfamiliar maze of corridors, she'd entered the meeting room with a nudge from her escort, and since been standing in silence as those in front of her explained their plan for her, the reason she'd been accepted in their ranks. They wanted to send her directly into the middle of where the assassination would take place. Disguised as a royal family member to help Jeff's disguise as he tried what would be the first of the attempts on Mirage's life. And it was when they finished that Triple came to the realization. I am going to die. Will said, probably, at the same time Preeminent said, no. The two glanced at each other, Preeminent dominating the room in a black uniform worked in silver, reflecting the blue of the hologram projector, towering over everyone, and Will, still in his white coat, completely unfazed by his imperious stare. The rest in the room almost faded into the background in the face of their staring match. Jeff stood near Preeminent, silent with his arms crossed in a black coat, with another Phillies in a black uniform who, disturbingly, had Maquis eyes. Next to Will was a human with dark, shoulder-length straight hair, wearing a black, asymmetrical top with one flared sleeve, watching with impatience. Preeminent turned back to her. We will not be putting you in any danger. Yes, you are, Will retorted flatly. Triple couldn't sense much from anyone in the room, but she didn't need to after that. Turning slowly, Preeminent looked down at Will, expression hard. If you do not wish to be helpful, Lieutenant, you may leave. Will met his gaze, expression unchanged. Your assurances are empty. She has seen the reality of the position you want her in. She will be the safest on the ground, disguised as a royal family member. Safest, in this case, being a misleading distinction. We both know you can't guarantee her safety, and she's aware of it. She's right here. Triple raised her hand, irritated. Preeminent raised a hand, keeping his eyes on Will. Triple's face twitched and waited as Preeminent and Will stared at one another. For an uncomfortably long time. What was taking them so... Triple cocked her head. Were they speaking telepathically? Considering she tried reading Preeminent, she slammed into the same barrier that Nala had. Preeminent looked toward her, his eyes narrowing. We are talking in private. Be patient, she heard in her mind. Triple shivered, taking a step back. Having Preeminent talk in her head felt just as bad as the trance, if different. She needed to learn how to make that barrier. Preeminent Will conversed for a little longer, and then Preeminent waved toward her. Will faced her. Triple, I'll be blunt. Your role in this will be dangerous. If discovered, you'll be in as much danger as everyone else, combatant or no. We will teach you what we can to fulfill your disguise and your abilities, but we don't have time to train you as much as we'd prefer. The others in the room were starting to frown as Will continued. The only reason you're being chosen is because you're a potent mind host, something that can't be taught. Is that really more important than actually knowing how to be a royal family member? Will shook his head. No, telepaths can tell the difference between a normal mind host and a potent one, but it can be overlooked. But it might not. You are the best chance at a perfect disguise, even with rush training. Triple shrugged. Okay. And? What are you asking me? If you'll accept the rule, Preeminent answered. I have a choice? She failed to keep the snark out of her tone. Yes, Preeminent affirmed, ignoring it. I can't afford to put someone uncooperative into the role. Too much is riding on it. If you choose to do it, it must be by your own decision. Except I don't really have much of a choice, do I? If I say no, I end up where I was before, right? Preeminent straightened, indignant. You are of the squads. That will not change. Not necessarily, Will said slowly. This time shock appeared on Preeminent's face rather than anger. Excuse me? In the case you don't return, your successor might feel differently, Will explained. A moment passed before Preeminent nodded slowly. Yes, that might be, he admitted softly. Triple shook her head, looking down. Triple, Will called. She looked up. This is a chance I told you about. You won't get another. Sighing, she snapped. Fine, I accept. That's what you wanted, right? Are we done? An exchange of glances throughout the room showed no, her answer wasn't liked. Once you leave this room, we won't allow you to back out, Preeminent warned. We won't have the time to properly prepare someone else. If you have any reservations, speak now. None that you can or will ever change, Triple thought bitterly. No reservations, she said aloud. Preeminent and the human woman next to Will both narrowed their eyes, but Preeminent continued. Then I would like to introduce you to your mind host mentor, Misa Settleman. She'll also be helping you teach about the royal families along with Will. The woman next to Will stepped up, nodding to her. Triple blinked, eyeing the woman more closely. She was going to be teaching her? Finally! I sense you're excited to get started, Preeminent said. Triple raised an eyebrow before glaring. Of course he contains her emotions. Salmon would lead you out for your first lesson. He turned to Salmon. You and the girl are dismissed. Salmon frowned. I will not be needed? We will not be discussing anything vital, and you'll be caught up to speed at our next meeting. Training her is more important. Time is limited. Pursing her lips, Salmon nodded. As Salmon left, without so much as looking at her, Triple clenched her teeth, following only after Will gave her a look. Smoldering as she followed Salmon through the circular corridors, arms crossed, Triple forced herself not to grit her teeth. The sound reminded her too much of that first break from the trance of chewing and biting. You're upset, Salmon said, looking back at her as she walked. Stop sensing my emotions, she growled. Salmon stopped, making Triple stumble to avoid running into her. She raised a finger. 1. You will not take that tone with me. I am both your mentor and superior, and while I will grant you some flexibility on decorum given your past, I expect respect. Understood? Triple's teeth remained clenched as he forced out, yes. Salmon's frown deepened, but she continued, raising a second finger. 2nd, you will not tell me what to do when under my tutelage. I will explain how to use your abilities appropriately, but the rules that apply out here will not apply between us as mentor and student. It is part of your training. If you wish to prevent me from sensing your emotions, you must learn how. Then can we please learn that now? I am taking you to do just that. Be patient. She sighed. William was right about you. Triple's eyes widened. What did he say about me? Salmon didn't reply immediately as they stepped out into the landing area, underneath the translucent dome of the base shield. When we were discussing how to approach you, she finally said, he mentioned you would be stubborn and resist being handled. Triple blinked. That was a franker response than she'd been expecting. He had suggested being blunt with you would be better than coercing or persuading, Salmon continued. We had dismissed the suggestion due to the reason for approach, but it seems it had credence to it.
I don't like being lied to, Triple said stiffly. Nobody does. They passed by ships in the middle of marked out areas, some similar to the freighter she and Echidna squad stayed in, some twice the size and bulkier, others slim and sleek. Your increasingly abrasive behavior was also mentioned and been noted, Triple. We understand your past makes this to be expected, but continue being free with your frustrations without care, and you'll receive a response. I hope you understand we are trying to be patient with you. Triple felt herself bristle. She cut off as Selman raised an eyebrow, feeling the hair on her face and neck stand. I may have been getting more frustrated off late, she admitted reluctantly. Pursing her lips, Selwyn gave a hum of agreement as she continued on. Your training will touch on those frustrations of yours and how to deal with them. Your training will require you to open yourself up to me. I understand it is difficult for you, but this will be necessary. Triple didn't say anything, but based on Selman's glance back, she knew her thoughts on that. Ease your mind. I don't expect immediate trust. Today we'll be setting the foundations of your training, including trust. They were almost to the edge of the shield, where it rose out of a wall surrounding the base, nearly as tall as a boron. Where are we going? Out, Selman said simply, as if that explained anything. Reaching the wall, Simon followed along it until finding an exit. Inputting a code, the door opened, the translucent shield visible within the doorway, separating the base from the outside. Are you sure it's safe to step out? Triple asked. It wasn't a concern she'd had before, when she stepped out onto the center base on that rocky world, but since then she knew that not all worlds were even as hospitable as Wasin. Salmon perfunctorily waved the question away. The atmospheric shield is just standard precaution now, hasn't been needed in decades. She hesitated and added, Don't breathe while stepping through. She then walked out. Triple, holding her breath, took one large step after her. Once out, she exhaled and found the air was different. It felt lighter, and her ears popped slightly, making her jump. And outside, her eyes widened as she took in what was in front of her. She knew what they were, but this was the first time she had ever seen any. Stemming from the ground, tall and white, leading up to their pale green sprouts, were trees, with grass surrounding them everywhere. Tentatively, Triple took a step onto the grass. The thin, short blades all bent under her foot, tickling her ankles, cushioning her step. The ground underneath gave way farther as she shifted her weight on it, the soil shaping around her sole. Triple bent down, grabbing a fistful of grass. The sun was low in the sky, and the grass felt cool to the touch. Pulling, the grass resisted. Before breaking off, she rubbed them between her fingers. One side felt smoother than the other, and something made her fingers feel sticky holding them. Triple let the grass fall back down, the blades twirling in the air as she did so. Taking slow, attentive steps, she approached one of the trees. She put a hand against the trunk, feeling the coarse surface, the little bumps catching the hand as she ran across it. Grinning from ear to ear, Triple pushed against the tree. It didn't budge, and she pushed harder, slipping and falling down, scraping her elbow. Triple looked at her arm, dirtied but fine. No marks, no blood, and barely any pain. Laughter. It took a second for Triple to realize it was coming from her. She looked up at the countless branches sprouting from the tree and each other, the sunlight shining through. Certainly the most jubilant reaction I've seen to these, Salmon said beside her. Triple jumped as she turned. She hadn't heard her get closer. The Borons tend to be reserved when they understand what's been done to them. Blushing, Triple stood. I know these are common, but they're the first I've seen. The first time the ground doesn't make me blister or bleed, where it can fall and feel fine. Salmon let out a low hum, eyes looking her up and down. Flushing, Triple touched at the scar on her face, the rest seeming to itch. Come along, Salmon finally said. Our destination isn't far. They went into the woods under the arching canopy, laying a blanket of light and shadow. Triple shivered, though not from cold. She could feel the warmth of the sunlight and its absence with every step. It almost tickled. She reached out to touch any tree that came within arm's reach, feeling the off-white rough bark. Once, when she was reaching out, Triple tripped on a root and just barely caught herself on the tree. When someone turned at the noise, Triple couldn't help grinning. After walking long enough that the sun was now hitting her eyes, forcing her to walk with a hand at her brow, they stepped into a large circular clearing, the grass there taller than in the woods. Inside the clearing were two other dissenters, one a blonde human floating a few feet above the ground, the other a filly standing further off. Hosts. Selman raised her arm, waving them over and flashing her armband, the blue stark and vibrant in the sun. The blonde human waved back and flew toward them, landing on a run, while the fillies ran over. "Commander, nice to see you here," the human said with a nod. He sent a quizzical glance toward Triple as the fillies joined him. As the fillies bowed his head to Selman, Triple noticed with surprise they were of similar height. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" "This is not a casual visit, I'm afraid," Selman held her arms behind her back. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the area today. I'm going to begin training this one as a full mind host and will need the space cleared for your safety." The human frowned and opened his mouth to speak up, but his companion laid a hand on his arm. "We'll leave," the filly said, turning to his friend. "Trust me, we don't want to be around for a mind host's first lessons. I'll tell you about mine." "Okay, but how long are we expected to stay away?" "For today, cut the practice short. I apologize for the inconvenience. This was a recent development. Tomorrow, I'll have all the hosts on the base informed when I intend to use the area. You can work around those hours until she's learned enough not to harm anyone." Someone raised an eyebrow. "Any complaints?" The corner of the human's lip pulled in a frown, but he shook his head. As he and the fillies left, the fillies patted Triple's shoulder. "Good luck." Triple blinked. Thank you." She watched as the fillies left with his companion and turned to see Selman watching her. "What?" "You are shocked by the most curious things." She sounded amused. Waiting for Triple to follow, she led her to the center of the clearing. "This isn't what I would consider an ideal place for mind host training, but it will serve the main purpose." She spread her arms out, encompassing the area with her gesture. "Welcome to the host practice grounds. Here, hosts come to fine-tune their skills where they're unlikely to cause undue harm or damage." Triple recalled the broken vials. "Good idea." Someone lowered her arms. "Among my mentors, they traditionally started their training with a display for their mentee, to show what you intend to teach them, what they are to aspire to, and to reaffirm the relationship between the mentor and mentee. The last is less needed for you, just starting, but I think the others will be educational." Shifting uncomfortably, Triple asked, "What do you mean by display?" Triple yelped. Something grabbed at her ankles. Looking down, she saw every blade of grass around her pointing toward her, reaching for her. She backed away, the grass trying to lash down her feet. Backing away more furiously, Triple took one more step and felt nothing. She fell back, crying as she grabbed for the ground, now a ledge before a gaping pit. She tried pulling herself up, but couldn't summon the strength. A hand pulled her. A hand grabbed her arm, pulling her up. As Triple's head topped the ledge, she saw the figure pulling her out. Skin pale as bone, hair, nails, and eyes of a dull gold. She smiled, teeth dripping red, and thunder cracked in a dark gray sky, wind blowing against her. And as Triple tried wrenching her arm away, preferring the pit to this creature, the sun returned. Triple would have fallen if she wasn't already lying on the ground, reaching for Selman's hand. She still took her hand back, hyperventilating. She hadn't even noticed the touch on her mind. She had been too overwhelmed. Triple slowly looked up at Selman, eyes wide, her calm expression suddenly frightening. "That," Selman said, making Triple flinch, "is what you can do. It is what I'll prepare you against." Triple swallowed. "You know, I really didn't need more convincing. I already had my entire life to convince me." Selman shrugged. "You now have a frame of reference going forward. No harm." She paused as she took in Triple, still gasping on the ground. "Little harm done. Ready to begin?" End of chapter.
Not bad, not bad.
My commentary is largely the same as it was before, because I've already read this chapter. It's rather sweet and wholesome. and I like it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think that kind of going back to triple is a good choice. Admittedly, it's been a long time, so I'm having trouble remembering a lot of the nuances. I mostly remember Vampress stuff.
Yeah, fair.
Let me think. I don't really have any other feedback. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or commentary?
Not really. No.
No, so no one has any disagreement on Salmon just doing that whole little vision thing.
Oh yeah, I think I mentioned that it was that was quite traumatic and horrifying, and I think I judged Salmon pretty harshly for doing that. If I
Fair.
remembered correctly, because I did read this chapter, as we've banged the drum on that enough times. But yeah, I guess that could just be you trying to say something with Salmon, or it could be something else. Also, I didn't know her name was pronounced Salmon. I just saw it as Salmon. I'm like, what? She gonna sell him out or something?
This happens to me too much.
You make it too easy.
It's not even intentional. It doesn't connect until you tell me.
Bro, that's a you problem. That ain't a me problem. That's all I'm saying. Freaking Ikikeel. Ikikeel.
Hey, everyone else was fine with that name. You're the literal only one with a problem with it.
Yeah, that's true. And freaking not David. I'm sorry. We love you, Aspire. I just love giving you crap on that.
Oh, I know, and I give you the same shit right back.
Yep. Hey, I gotta have something.
Indeed. Alrighty. You up, Whis?
Send me the chapter link again, Wiss, so I can read along.
What? Fine.
Send me...
I'm not reading chapter 9 of book 1.
I thought I told you to do so. I said it would be a good time for that, and you agreed.
I didn't agree. I said the opposite. I said I already committed to reading out the freaking prologue to Val's story.
Fine.
I mean, I can pull it out. It's just going to be a bit.
Yeah, women are like that a lot of the time.
You're lucky a certain someone isn't here in chat to hear that.
Womp womp.
Well, if you're inside, it's going to take a minute.
It should hopefully take more than a minute.
I mean, my mood is way too good right now.
You want it to take a minute for her. You don't want it to take a minute for you. To be more precise.
Well, anyway, I mean, I guess I could just go ahead and briefly explain what's going on over here. So this is going to be the prologue and of the first half of chapter 1 for another series that I wanted to do within the same universe, but taking place in the far future. And by the far future, I mean about, I don't know, give or take 50-something years. So a lot has happened, and by nature of it taking place this far into the future, I'm basically going to be spoiling who survives the original series. Spoiler alert, the main protagonist survives her own book series. Shouldn't that be a
Wow.
shocker? Yeah,
How shocking.
yeah, what a shocker. The main protagonist lives. But, yeah, anyway, last time I presented this, I couldn't take it
The
seriously
main
at all.
protagonist with the OP healing, yeah.
The main protagonist with the OP healing who ends up acquiring the powers to kill Redacted. So, yeah.
I believe like Satan or God or whatever.
Court's out on that. You can decide what you want the power scaling to be.
I was just thinking, you spawn of Satan. I take it back, you spawn of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it doesn't seem so bad. I take it back, you spawn of Satan.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, with all that out of the way, I guess I may as well would get started on the actual material itself. All right, so silence. The glistening twinkling of twilight stretches across the deep violet sky, and below it is where Valerie lies. She resides on an artisan patio carved from granite and marble, built high onto the mountain. From here, she could see the silhouette of trees lining the horizon, the vast expanse of the verdant forest under the pale light of night. Yet her gaze remains fixed on a crimson fire of her own making. Its glow illuminates her olive skin, shining against her pitch-black hair and reflecting off her blood-red eyes. The air is warm and temperate. She doesn't need any flames to heat her, nor any insulation of any kind. Her form is a source of envy for others, something she'd boast about and privately present, without shame or guilt. Yet, she keeps herself wrapped in the black blanket, for shame and guilt are all that engulf her. It's why she's here, why her jaws remain locked and her lips sealed. It's why she feels so hollow. So, Valerie continues to stare into the crimson flames, watching them shift and dance. She keeps her breath deep, waiting protracted periods of time between inhaling and exhaling, alone in silent introspection. Me, alone, she asks herself. I, the mother of the blood moons, the slayer of beasts, the blood phoenix. No, the pride of phoenixes. She stops herself, catching herself in her tirade, and letting her grip loosen. The memory comes crawling back into her head, a spider emerging from the shadows. She sees herself holding her. She remembers her warm tears streaming down her face and onto a lifeless form she held. The woman's face frozen in pain and terror. The corners of Valerie's lips contort into a frown. Her scarlet eyes glistening. And I'm alone. Him peers into the fire, watching it crackling and dancing in place. The tips of the flames that deep maroon, almost black, and the base.
It's a little hard to understand you, Wis.
Huh?
It's a little hard to understand you. You're kind of, I don't know if it's a connection, but I can't really make out the words.
Oh, it's muttering. Does it kind of sound like that?
Yeah, you were muttering a little bit and we couldn't understand you.
Okay, hold on. The memory comes crawling back into her head like, oh wait, I read that part. What was the last thing you guys heard?
Start from there. Let's just make sure we get it all. We don't want to miss anything important.
All right. She stops herself, catching herself in her tirade and letting her grip loosen. The memory comes crawling back into her head like a spider emerging from the shadows. She sees herself holding her. She remembers her warm tears streaming down her face and onto the lifeless form she held. The woman's face frozen in pain and terror. The corners of Valerie's lips contort into a frown, her scarlet eyes glistening. And I'm alone. Again. She peers into the fire, watching it crackling and dancing in place. The tips of the flames a deep maroon, almost black, and the base a rosy color. She lifts her head up and angles it ever so slightly, letting her see the building high up in the mountains where her fate would be decided. She remembers standing before 10 of the 12 matriarchs in that dreary chamber. The pressure had pressed around her, and the crushing sensation in her chest, the deliberation and arguing. Worst of all, her own mother refused to attend, hence why it was 10 in attendance instead of 11. Phoenixes, arguing with each other, bickering like mere mortals, like those contemptible humans. And I caused it. Valerie stares back into the fire, trying to recall the arguments she made, the evidence she presented in her defense. She had kept track of them in her head, which way each of the matriarchs fell on their decision. Angela had decided on innocent, as did Nor and Meryl. Prithvi abstained from announcing her decision, but she already knew it would be innocent. However, Aisha hadn't even entertained her arguments. The covenant Valerie broke was too great. Naomi was too close to him. Valerie already knew what her decision was before she ever entered the room. The vote was close, a razor-thin line, with only one voice left whose decision could swing it in her favor. Rosa, her aunt. Valerie's face begins to pale, recalling the fury in her aunt's eyes and the passion in her voice. She hadn't aged a day past 21. Her bronze skin went unwrinkled, and her oceanic blue eyes and fluorescent pink hair would go unfaded. One could be forgiven for not realizing she was 76 years old, a veteran of war, the former commander of the Phoenix Corps, and possibly the sole savior of humanity. Valerie had stared down many in the past, mechanical monstrosities, transhuman warriors, and even death itself. None of it could compare to the mortifying feeling of being the object of her hero's ire. The Blood Phoenix shudders, her form trembling and shaking. She'll be here soon, Valerie. You must tell her everything. You must be brave. She instructs herself, clenching her hands. Then her ears twitch, and the hairs on her neck stick up. Oh, crap. Battery's running low. Hold on. How much do I have left? 10%. All right. I'll try to make this one quick then. Valerie feels a force press against her from all sides, a very distinct and fiery presence. It's when she hears the clanking of shoes against the floor that she looks up. Rosa Esperanza Luna is here. She wears a pair of pink decorative metal bracers stylized in wrapping rose vines, a pair of slippers in similar colors and styling, and an artisan loincloth depicting flames on her right, snowflakes on her left, and rose thorns at the center. Notably, still, she is one of the few matriarchs who refuses to wear her crown. Valerie's head into her shoulders, seeing the Flameheart glower at her. Grand Marshal Rosa, she snaps, cutting her off. I told you, I'm not her anymore. You can call me Auntie, Tia, or Rosa. But I am not a Grand Marshal anymore. Valerie hangs her head, letting it rest on the floor. Rosa takes a deep breath and motions her hand. Quit laying there. Valerie swallows and does so, sitting upright, but keeping the blanket wrapped around herself. her crimson crown sitting beside where her head once rested. Rosa squints and speaks. Aren't you warm in that? Valerie glances down at herself and shakes her head. Rosa nods and sits down right across from where Valerie is sitting. The two lock eyes, Valerie's expression becoming ever more mortified the longer she stares into the Flameheart's furious gaze. Do you have any idea what you've done? Valerie blinks and lowers her head. She recalls the incident, the reason she is on trial. She sees him standing there in the midst of the storm, a silvery figure against a black backdrop with his back turned to her, unbothered, unfazed, at peace. She remembers the cold winds of the planet of Bassett, the sound of rain hitting the ground, the flashes of lightning, and the thunderclaps that followed. Valerie remembers the clashes of blades, the bursts of white light, and the sagely serenity of that otherwise callous, cold old man. Valerie felt the shame pressing against her ribs, threatening to crush her as she buried the light, watching it fade from his eyes. Her eyes water, her throat clogs, but she holds her chin high and answers anyway. Yes, I do. Rosa's frown deepens, her brows pull together, and her gaze begins to burn with all the fury of the stars across the cosmos. Then you know why Maria couldn't be here. Why my sister, your own mother, refused to be here. Valerie nods again, and Rosa huffs. A glow within her became visible, her famed flaming heart. The others might have made their minds already. And honestly, I should have too. I've gotten used to hearing the pathetic excuses of demons and monsters, used to looking him in the eyes, putting him down, and not becoming them. But you... Valerie feels a chill run down her spine, peering into the absolution in the form of Rosa's burning gaze and spotting an icy tear run down her face. Why? Why'd you do it? She asks, her voice softening and quiet. Why'd you murder your own father? Valerie hangs her head, seeing herself standing over the still silvery corpse that was once her dad. She blinks, returning back to the present and addressing Rosa. Forgive me, I was under the impression I had already explained myself. Rosa squints, glaring at her with naked contempt. You used a bunch of jargon and fancy language to make your fathers look like some big scary monster that had to be defeated. You gave us some official bullshit report and acted like there was no choice, that it was some calculated move that you had no other motive behind it. Rosa pauses, her tone becoming darker. You know, the kind of shit your father used to pull on me. Valerie freezes in place, her eyes becoming empty as she stares back into Rosa's. No, I want to know what the fuck you were thinking. Why your disgusting little brain jumped straight to murder. Why you didn't even talk him out of it. The flames flicker, a gust of wind blowing past him. Rosa remains still. If her gaze were a blade, it would be sharp enough to sunder even the singularity lying behind the event horizon. Valerie, however, stares back into the flames. She squints, dissecting the words and piecing together their meaning. Valerie gathers her thoughts, sharpening the spear in her mind to a fine point. Then it dawns on her. The moment in her life that changed everything. She remembers them, all four of these women and their fates. She remembers the incident that gave rise to the burning fire in front of her and realizes its effect on her. Valerie peers back at Rosa, her strength and vigor returning, her voice as powerful and deep as her form implies. Would it be too great an inconvenience if we started from the beginning? Rosa takes a deep breath and answers back. No, it wouldn't. We have all night. Valerie nods and begins. My reasons are threefold, but to understand them, I must tell you how I came to realize them as true. So, we'll begin with the first. It started with a dream that I had when I was still a human, a little over 20 years ago. And that's where I'll end for today.
All right. Not a bad start. Not a bad start. I love that expression, that phrase, sharp enough to sever the singularity beyond the event horizon. That was a very good choice of metaphor.
Thank you. I figured that given the scale that Rosa is at right now, it would only be appropriate if I use more cosmic-styled metaphors and analogies, which is why I decided that no, she isn't just any Fury. It's literally the Fury of all the fiery stars across existence at this point. Like, she's a very powerful and cosmic level entity. But I also wanted to make sure that she's still comes up as grounded, like a normal human being, despite all of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. It's real good. One thing I notice is that you're putting a lot of your exposition into dialogue. That is something that it's very tempting. I see what is a it's very tempting to try and put all of that into the a very natural form of interhuman interaction, but it can sometimes sound a little stilted if it's not carefully selected. I don't know if this makes any sense. Especially because you had the very early on, there was the it was the memories come back.
Yeah,
that part. And it would be very easy just to have more memories come back as they're talking. Which could have much more clarity, because it's pretty clear that these two people were both present for the events that are being discussed, so they don't need to be as specific as they are being, and it's a little stilted.
Yeah, I will admit I will admit that the dialogue could have been better, just generally better, because something I was particularly struggling with is finding these characters' voice. Like, how do they talk?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Rose, I've been writing her for a while, but Valerie is presenting quite the challenge, because on one hand, I want her to come off as arrogant and uptight and thinking and just sort of sneering down at everyone else. But in this particular scene, she isn't that. She isn't the pride of Phoenixes. She's just Valerie. She's just a person in this scene. Like, all the pomp has been stripped away from her.
One thing that occurred to my mind, maybe there's a thing at the trial and her crimes are read out, because that seems to be the main elements of the exposition that you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
I think that would actually solve a lot.
Wait, could you repeat that suggestion again? I don't think I understood it.
Basically, the idea would be that there's some kind of trial or arraignment or hearing where the crimes that Wissia exposits to her are litigated in a back and forth. as opposed to just an exposition dump in dialogue.
So you're suggesting that it could just straight up be in the trial, and they're actually discussing her list of crimes. Like the opening could just be the trial itself.
Yep.
As tempting as that is, and as sensible as that may be, I personally find that to be a little difficult. It definitely is a possibility. I can definitely try pulling off that, but there's characters in there that I don't even have the names for yet.
You could just have it be the ending of the meeting.
Well, yeah, this is kind of what this is. It's like this is before the final vote, so it is technically the end of all the hearings.
You can figure out characters as you write something. That's totally fine. I've done that a few times, and it's worked out relatively well.
Yeah.
I say in mine,
suppose.
changing the details
Yeah.
as you're writing is half the fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do know who everybody in that room is, mostly. It's just that I don't even know what the character's name is, and I find it very difficult to write if I don't have like a name or a euphemism that refers to them. Kind of like how Rosa is the Flame Heart or Maria is Twilight. You know, fancy, cute little nicknames like that.
Then make something up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been doing the whole time anyway, but
Mhm.
yeah, I just haven't figured that part out, is what I'm getting at.
For
It's not
me,
that I
with
can't
my-
do it, it's that I haven't done it yet.
Some of the stuff in my Dragonlord Annals is the fact that because I'm going off of certain European nomenclature, I can reuse variations of the same name throughout the different books because a lot of them are about 1,000 years apart in some cases, or 500 years.
I mean, I guess that's an idea that I could do. Or I could just simply retool the dialogue to make it sound, better.
Do you think that you can, though?
I mean,
Since it would be very difficult if it's in kind of because the problem that you run into with trying to retool is you're trying to get around the as you know annoyance, the maiden butler dialogue.
yeah, that was
the point I was trying to make earlier.
Yeah, because this whole conversation is basically a as you know sort of bit.
Yep. And that
Because-
creates problems.
But
I'll definitely have to
it's the
think
sort of
about
thing
that.
that you just have to deal with when it's a new project. You're still finding your way around things, and nobody expects your first draft to be press ready.
Mm-hmm.
And from all the other stuff that we've seen so far, it looks like there's definitely something going on here. We'll be very happy to see how it works out.
Oh, definitely. I think that there's some definite potential here. I just think there's some refinement that needs to happen.
Yeah, I'll try to see what I can do about the whole as you know issue with this bit over here. But anyway, any other thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, this is just the prologue, right?
That is correct.
Well, the prologue can be short. It doesn't have to be the same length as a regular chapter. If you're worried about there's some exposition that you need to get out, some exposition that needs to stay hidden, that is going to be revealed later, then don't be afraid to just keep it really, really short. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to make it any longer than this. I mean, it is a prologue. It is meant to just be a quick primer to set the scene and set the context from which these stories are being shared in. Because the point of this scene is to present the context of why these stories are being told in this setting. Because the rest of this book is basically just Valerie explaining to Rosa what happened, except we're actually seeing it third person omniscient sort of point of view instead of through Val's eyes.
I wouldn't say
pseudo omniscient.
Yeah, I would agree that it's pseudo omniscient. I wasn't really getting like omniscient because I wasn't getting Roto. It was getting a Rosa's perspective. I wasn't sure if it necessarily fit that exact description.
Mm-hmm. Aspiring, you've been surprisingly quiet, but he also read this as well.
Yeah. You just kind of refined it a bit. You've read this too before.
That is also true. Speaking of which, how does it compare?
I think it's significantly improved. But there's just some maiden. Just the main thing is the maiden butler dialogue.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bit difficult to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
the last thing I want to do is actually show the trial itself, because I just because it depersonalizes almost all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'll work on that. I'll try to figure out a proper solution to it.
Okay.
Any complaints about the prose or anything like that?
No,
I think so.
no, you're fine.
Okay.
Prose is fine. Yeah. Well, I think that I will probably just skip this week. I've got a really bad headache and I'm really tired.
Fair enough.
Tired. So I think we'll just call it good there. Alrighty, thank you all for coming. I think that this week on Friday we're going to do Neverending Story 2. Which that's going to be interesting. We aren't to the really bad one yet. We're to the kind of meh one first. I think in the future I might need to put a little bit more of a limit on how many people come on Writer Showcase.
I think part of it was Karam didn't realize how long he could read.
Or that he was going on for a while.
Well, I think so. I know he started at about I'm on at about, and then I said gave him the time at around like 1:13 in. So yeah, and it then took it's taken us up to 3 hours to get through the others. So I think that maybe just having like max of 4 or other people, since we had a lot of people in. So yeah. All right. Well, we will call.
We asked him to come on the Friday group.
Well, I know, but it was just like
I think
nobody
he said
would
he's
come
okay.
on. Well, he is. It's just that there's nobody coming to the Friday group. Is the problem?
Which is a shame.
So which is
Some people voted
so
for it. Try and ask them again.
well, it's so. It's just that I think part of it is Raptor is still working on getting something to present. Is the problem? And let's see. So who has? Let me see. So Friday Writers Group. Yeah, I probably need to figure out better the numbers, but it was just nobody's been able to do it. But we will call it good for today. See you guys later. Bye.
See ya.
All right. See ya.
Enough! Kill me! Just end it.